Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the legendary Saiyan and got harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to NamiKaaZae09 for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Prologue. The Rebirth. 1,000 years have passed since the battle with the Shadow Dragons and the Earth's Guardians, the Z Warriors. Ever since that fateful day, the Earth's mightiest protector, Son Goku, fought his last fight and tiredly joined the newly rejuvenated Shenron and left his family behind to rest his tired soul of all the fighting, forever joining Shenron, taking the Dragon Balls with him so the humans can learn to rely on themselves instead of the magical items. Ever since then, Goku's along with Vegeta's family and friends had continued to watch the Earth as its protectors in the stead of their old friend Goku, and long later died, but given birth to children to take up the mantle watching the Earth as its protectors. Even Vegeta, the Saiyan Prince, as well as old rival and old friend of Goku's, took up the title to keep his friend's legacy alive until his death as well. Since then, the blood of the Saiyan race has all but passed on through the generations, growing weaker and weaker, but still compressed and growing stronger through each generation. That's when disaster struck as a terrible apocalypse struck the Earth, almost bringing extinction to the human race. They survived though, but at the cost of the protectors of the Earth's lives when they sacrificed themselves to quell down the apocalypse to a minimum, but it also cost the Earth's technology to completely go haywire before forever being lost to the world. As time passed, the Earth's barren wasteland soon began to thrive and humans began to appear once more. Time passed and civilizations rose and fell upon the passage of time and war. Since then, from what humans called upon was heaven's blessing, was that a large creature of godly proportions with 10 tails came from heaven. This entity was called many things as a guardian, protector, savior of Earth, but one name stuck with it for thousands of years. The Jubi. The celestial being was a creation made from Kami, since the Kais of old and new had all but died out, and the new gods have taken up the mantle of their old predecessors to watch over the universe, but the Earth in particular that watched more sternly, since it was the same world the very warriors that could rival themselves in power grew up and got stronger throughout their lives. This being, the Jubi, was created for the sole purpose of protecting humanity and keeping peace of Earth, but soon the dark side of humanity turned its ugly head. The group of greedy and power-hungry humans appeared mysteriously and tried to control the entity with an art called Fuinjutsu, only to have it backfire on them and enrage the Jubi. That day, humans angered the once protector of the Earth and soon found out they weren't so powerful without the Jubi's help anymore. The man who had been named as the Rakuto Sennin appeared before the enraged entity and tried to calm the beast and negotiate in why it's so angry, but the creature was too far gone to speak to the human. Its anger had slowly been rising over the years of seeing humans and their greed for power, and when those foolish mortals, as it called them, tried to control him, that drew the line for it and killed all of the humans that got in its way to cleanse the Earth. Seeing the beast to enraged answer, the Rakuto did a sealing only he knew and was said to have been blessed by the Jubi's very own creators to calm the beast. How he did this? He used the power of his eyes and body and sealed the entity within his own body, making him the first of many Jinchuriki to come before him. Years later, the Rakuto was on his deathbed and was already at death's door, so with the last of the incredible man spirit, he gave his 2 sons a gift for the future. The youngest he gave his physical power and body, and to the eldest, he was given his eyes and spiritual power. After this, the Rakuto had named the youngest as his successor, which in turn made the eldest, who believed in power, could keep the peace of the world, turn his back on the youngest and try to attack him. Which in turn led to the 2 sons' rivalry go throughout the ages, as with their families passing on the rivalry and legacy of the Rakuto. As the man laid on his deathbed with the last of his strength, he split the Jubi's power into 9 parts and sealed each one into a spiritually aware animal of his choosing. One was a sand-colored tanuki, which in turn became the Ichibi no Shukaku, a purple cat which soon became the Nibi Nekomata. Thirdly was the choosing of a beach sea turtle, which became the Sanbi no Yutsuri. Next was a monkey of legend, which in turn became the Yonbi. Fifth was a fusion of a horse and a dolphin of the ocean, which the 2 joined as one, becoming the Gobi, the 5-tailed whale horse. Sixth was the animal of healing, as the locals put it, a slug that birthed medically used slugs, became the Rakubi 6-tailed gastropod. Seventh was another fusion of a rhino and a forest beetle, which soon became the Shichibi 7-tailed rhino beetle. Eighth was a fusion of a squid and an ox, which turned into the Hachibi 8-tailed oxcephalopod. Finally, the last one was his secret daughter. She chose that day to take the last and most strongest of all of the Jubi's power, and after much heated debate fused her with a orange fox, turning her into the now mythical legend, Kyubi no Kitsune. After the separation of the godlike entity and seeing his only child, now a Biju as he named them, finally died, not knowing of the future he brought upon the world. Centuries later. On Hagakure. The day just wasn't Minato Namikaze's day. First off, the civilian council was still causing a scene of having more trade relations with other villages, to increase their own shops and stores, to fill their own pockets, while the shinobi council was advising him to make advancements on opposing villages' borders. But he always saw the reluctance of Koharu and Homura, so they weren't all there with Danzo Shimura when it came to military relations. Lastly, the evils of being the Hokage of a shinobi village, the evil no Hokage or any Kage in history has ever been able to face and defeat. The accursed paperwork. But he was joyfully happy also. His wife Kushina was gonna give birth to twins, and from what his friend Tsunade said, one was a boy and the other a girl. He couldn't wait to be a father. But something happened. A masked man had come and attacked during Kushina's labor and threatened to kill his 2 children if he didn't step away from the woman. Doing so started the whole situation he was in now. In front of him was a chained 9-tailed fox growling at him and a bloody rage in its eyes. With his wife Kushina on the ground beside him holding his 2 children in her arms as they both stared into the crazed eyes of the QB that was once a loving being to Kushina. "Damn you Madara, damn you to hell." Kushina yelled as she was told of what the man did and only knew of one person to control the QB in such a way. Minato looked very desperate and broken. He had tried everything to quell QB, but nothing had worked, that is until he remembered a particular ceiling. Looking at his children, he looked at his daughter. The sleeping babe had the same hair as Kushina, only with a few streaks of blonde, but blue eyes like his own. Looking at his son, he felt a rush of fatherly pride. The boy had spiky yellow hair like his own, but strangely, it seemed to glow at times. His eyes. He remembered them even now. They were his mother's eyes, but at the same time flashed a sea green before disappearing. He remembered the birth of the 2 and had gave his son the name Naruto, which he meant as Maelstrom, and Kushina named their daughter Mito, whom he named after Tsunade's grandmother. His son was born before her a minute early, so Naruto was the older brother of Mito. He smiled seeing his family and children, but his face turned stony, remembering what he had to do. But that he got the sobbing Kushina's attention and told him of his plan. Only they nor QB never knew of another entity watching the scene with interest. Realm of Shenron. Watching the scene was a giant green dragon with 2 glowing red eyes. He watched on with what could be seen as a smile. Ever since the birth of the planet, he had watched on as the earth continued without the Dragon Balls and how it grew and fell when the apocalypse fell upon the world. Everything, and seen how the new gods, as they call themselves these days, created Juubi, a being he would say had the power to rival a Super Saiyan at best. He snorted in amusement. That thing did its job protecting the earth for a while, until those humans tried to control it, something the dragon found amusing, since seeing the Juubi crush them like ants and seeing them scream and run in fear was to him an amusing show. That's when he narrowed his eyes, seeing the scene before him, and had to think of an idea of what to do, because it was quite obvious the male was gonna use something to deal with the QB. But when he looked at the boy the man was staring at, his eyes widened at epic proportions before he started to chuckle before outright laughing. Ahaha. Who would have thought their blood was still alive on Earth? And in such a condensed matter, if a slight tap into the boy's blood, I can awaken it, he mused, thinking of what he could do. That's when he thought of something. Even though he would bring out his presence once more into the world and give out his location to the other celestial beings, it wouldn't matter, for if his plan worked there would be a new and stronger guardian for the Earth than all the previous combined. Searching within himself, he felt it, the presence was still there, but he could feel the Saiyan's presence and smirked. I think it's time for a rebirth of a Saiyan and a guardian, he said before his form started to glow gold before disappearing in a flash of light. Back with Minato. I see you're gonna seal the QB into Naruto, but what about Konoha? They will see him as a monster, you should know this. Kushina said, trying to change Minato's idea, but it was unfortunately impossible. The man wouldn't budge. I know this, but I can at least try. Besides, he will have you and Mito in his life. He said, trying to reassure her, but even in the deepest reaches of his heart, he knew the life Naruto would lead if he did this, and it was heart-wrenching to know he would be the one to place the burden on his newly born son. The crying redhead just hung her head low, unable to say anything else. Her newly born son was gonna become the next Jinchuriki of the QB. She knew the horrors of being one, and it pained her to know she couldn't stop it in her horrible state. As he was about to reach for Naruto, Minato felt a presence overbearing, and everything he ever felt before, even QB's bloodlust and killing intent, was dwarfed by this feeling of power. Looking around, he saw everything stopped, like time slowed down to a crawl. Looking back at Kushina, he saw that she was frozen as well, but somehow his son was still sleeping like normal. That's when he heard lightning, and snapping his head up, he saw something that would make the toughest of Hokages scream like little girls. Above him in the black sky was a green giant dragon with red glowing eyes, and its jaws were wide in a grin, revealing its giant razor-sharp teeth. In short, the thing made the QB look like a newborn kid. Minato broke out in a cold sweat when the dragon's head started to come closer to him and his family, before finally stopping a foot away from him. Shenron found it quite amusing to see the blonde man nervous, but couldn't blame him, seeing something of his stature was sure to scare even the toughest of any being. The gods themselves knew not to anger him unless they wanted to face the wrath of a dragon. Looking at Minato, he turned his gaze toward Kushina before resting his eyes upon the blonde babe. Naruto, he heard his name was. Closing in, he looked down at the sleeping babe, and before Minato's shocked eyes, a golden orb of light softly floated out of the dragon and into Naruto, and before he could do anything, there was a flash of light erupting from Naruto's form until it became clear again. Opening his eyes, Minato saw where his blonde son slept was a spiky black-haired baby with larger than normal arms for a babe. He saw the black-haired boy's eyes open slightly to see him and the dragon. Right then Minato saw the change in his son. He still had his father's eyes but were deep blue in color. Looking back at the dragon, "What did you just do to my son?" Getting a chuckle from the dragon, making the area shake and him stumble a bit. "Mortal, I have just did a little something that will save this world and bring about a new guardian for the entire earth. Your son Naruto, as you call him, is in reality the reincarnation of a being far stronger than any human or Biju. Hell, this being was able to tear the world asunder if he wanted to, but he protected like and cherished it throughout his whole time. And now your son will be reborn as this man, for this world needs a Saiyan once more to protect it from the future dangers that are to come," Shenron explained, getting a shocked look from Minato, looking back at his son who was curiously looking around as a brown monkey tail twitched a few times from behind him, making Minato gape. Looking back, he saw the dragon chuckling, "I know what's with the tail, right? Well, let's just say this being wasn't exactly human, but had the heart of one. Now about your little QB problem, I can't have you sealing it into this child, so I suggest you seal it into your daughter. Don't worry, nothing will happen to her, that I can promise you," he explained. Minato just stood there for a few minutes to reassess the situation before he lowered his head in defeat. No matter how much he thought, nothing else would work, and he most definitely wouldn't disagree with a dragon this size. So with a heavy heart, he began to do the seals for the Shikifujin as Shenron started to glow a golden light. Finishing the hand seals, he asked one last thing, "I'm sorry Naruto, Mito, Kushina, I love you all." Before slamming his hands on the ground and shouted Shikifuen. But the sealing announced, Shenron's body rose before shooting into Naruto once more. Good thing too, because then a figure floated from behind Minato with a twisted grin on its face. It was the Shinigami, entity of death and apprentice of King Yama. Looking around, the Shinigami's face turned into a frown before it settled upon the chained down Biju and broken family before it. Though when its eyes landed upon Naruto's tailed form, its eyes widened a bit before its grin got even wider. Though it looked down to see the one who summoned him talking with a woman. "Minato, what happened to our son? He's changed," she yelled, frantically worrying over what happened to Naruto. Minato just chuckled a bit. Even in such a situation, Kushina was always oblivious to what was going on. "Let's just say Naruto is gonna be someone very important to the world, and changes appeared since, well, Naruto is basically the reincarnation of someone very important, and let's leave it at that." Haha, Kushina wasn't amused if the glare at him was anything. "Minato, I swear if what you're saying is some kind of joke, I will do Shinigami's job for it and kill you," she said darkly, making him sweat a bit before they both turned to see something very adorable in both their eyes. Mito was giggling while petting the monkey tail that twitched, it slowly somehow reacting to her touches her baby face and caressed her face, making her burst into giggles once more and smiled at the sight until they were interrupted by the situation at hand. Looking up, they saw the Shinigami with an annoyed look on its face. "If you are done, mortal, I'd like to get this done with. I have other things to do, torture other souls and whatnot." The entity of death gaining sweat drops from both parents. But that Minato gently took hold of Mito while Kushina held Naruto. Seeing what Minato was about to do, Kushina just felt so bad about not knowing how to do this another way, and now one of her children had to pay the price for it. She felt awful and disgusted with herself at that moment. But looking down, she saw Naruto's blue eyes staring at her own purple ones with curiosity before he reached up, placed both hands on her cheeks and smiled. This seemed to lighten her mood a bit. Even if he changed a lot, he was still Naruto, so grasping his little hands, she held them gently as she kissed his forehead. Holding him tightly, she made a silent vow to always protect her children from any and all enemies that would try to hurt them. Hearing the sound of a body hitting the floor, she slowly looked up to see the QB gone, the Shinigami's spirit gone as well, with Minato's dead body on the ground with his arms wrapped around Mito's crying form. Quickly getting up, she got to the little red head and slowly placed the crying baby in her other arm before looking down at Minato's body and smiled sadly. "Don't worry, Minato, they will be safe, I promise," she assured her late husband, not knowing of the painful future that's gonna come for them. 3 days later. It's been 3 days since the attack of QB and the village of Konohagakure. The civilian and shinobi alike were all mourning for their loss against the QB, but most were mourning for their late Hokage, the Yondaime, who sacrificed his life to defeat the demon, as they were all told. Only the higher-ups in the shinobi rank truly knew what happened, and yet even they wouldn't mention anything. Meanwhile at the Sarutobi clan house, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Kami no Shinobi, student of the Shoin Nidaime, sensei of the legendary Sannin, and predecessor of the Yondaime, was rubbing his temples in frustration. The council was now on his back trying to have the current Jinchuriki Mito killed since he did announce to the council of what happened. Now he was getting pissed real fast of how the whole council, civilians and elders, were acting. That's when he remembered Kushina and the two children and smiled softly at the thought of them. The two little babes were almost inseparable, and they slept in the same crib because if they were separated, Naruto and Mito both would cry until they were put back together with each other. Naruto's wail was strong enough to crack a damn window, and it seemed to always get louder with each passing hour, and even caused several of the Anbu who were watching him, eardrums to bleed, literally, and almost disrupt the sound barrier seal. Though that didn't stop his iron will of protecting the three from the council, and told Kushina they were welcome to live within his clan home, since the Namikaze compound was all but in ruins during the attack. Remembering the two smiling faces of the two babes as well as the happy form of Kushina with them, made the fire in his eyes burn brightly. The fire he had possessed when he was in his prime and then grew into a cold fury. He rose up and snapped his fingers, causing two masked Anbu awaiting their leader's orders. Brat, Boar, gather up the council, it is time they learned just who it was that ruled Konoha. He said in an authoritative and murderous tone that made the two Anbu inwardly flinch but smile in satisfaction since the true Sandaime, the man who survived 3 of the great wars, mastered over 1,000 jutsu. And the very man who in his prime was the strongest of the other elemental Kages in their prime, was coming back. With a quick hi, the two disappeared in a shushin. With that, Sarutobi turned around and headed to the Namikaze's room to check up on them. While walking he mildly remembered something about Naruto that made him curious, which was the monkey tail attached to his backside, and his hair was as black as night and still spiked, but not like his father's, more like spiked in all directions. He found it amusing of how Naruto looked similar to that of a newborn monkey he'd seen when he visited Monkey King Enma for the first time. Heading to the door, he knocked a few times getting an enter. When walking in he saw something very adorable in his eyes. In front of him was Kushina holding Mito as she played with the taller, but still small baby Naruto. The little redhead was playing with Naruto's tail like it was her favorite pastime in the whole world. Naruto himself looked constipated about something, but soon started to cry a bit when Natsume gripped his tail tighter. Seeing the imminent danger of one of Naruto's dangerous shouts of hell, he flashed to the little babes and grabbed Mito's hand softly and pulled it away from the now ticking time bomb that was Naruto. Kushina, I'm about to head for another council meeting, and after this we will explain on how you want to train these two, for I know how much you want them to get stronger to protect themselves, so after this, we will discuss on how you want to train them, alright? He said getting a happy nod from the woman. Thank you Oji-san, and these two would probably say the same thing, but I think they're a little busy. She said with a giggle at the end. He smiled at the family of 3 and headed out to go show the council who truly controls Konoha and got them under control he did after killing several civilian and beating Danzo literally into the ground and having him sent to the hospital. He reminded those of the council who truly ruled Konoha with an iron fist. After this with the help of his 2 other teammates Kaharu and Homura, he explained to the clan heads of what truly happened and to say some were shocked was like saying Jiraiya had a healthy relationship with women. Biggest understatement of the year as Kushina's best friends Tsume and Makoto generally asked an audience with her and the 2 children which he accepted, but no others, since even for a Hokage, didn't trust those of the Konoha clans that much. 7 years later. After that day Hiruzen, with the help of Kushina, helped train the 2 little children to be shinobi so they could defend themselves, and the 2 children took to training like a fish in water, especially Naruto for some reason he trained much more than any child his age should. He always trained day in and day out not stopping till he drops and no one was able to understand. Naruto simply said that it was something calling him to never stop training, always go forth and never stop. What he found very interesting in the shinobi arts was ninjutsu and fuinjutsu, but the one he took to most was surprisingly taijutsu. He had found the art exhilarating to him since you could fight close up with your opponent and not from long or mid-range. Since he didn't find any of the current art suitable for him, so when Sarutobi realized this, he decided to teach Naruto a style he learned from the Monkey King Enma called the Sariken, Monkey Fist, which to his surprise Naruto was able to easily learn the basics. His grandfather figure who is known to him as Oji-san or Jiji as he and his sister Mito likes to call him, had one time introduced them both to any kind of weapon they would use, and to Mito, she chose to wield a katana like her mother, as did Naruto, but for some reason he felt like there was another weapon that would suit him aside from a sword. That's when he at one time grasped a bow staff and at that moment just knew he had to learn how to use one aside from a blade. It was a good thing Hiruzen was a master Bijutsu user and at that day started to teach Naruto the ways of the Bijutsu, while Kushina taught her daughter and him the ways of using a katana. Speaking of Mito, for a 7-year-old girl she was quite the hothead just like her mother, since anything that pissed her off would make any male in the vicinity flinch holding their groins at a phantom pain, as they still remembered that one man that tried to grope Kushina and that same man ended up getting a good beating from both Mito and Naruto. But Mito finished it off by throwing a kunai right in the center of the man's groin, destroying any way of him having children, but if there was one thing she loved most was her big brother, despite him only being a minute older than her, he stood by her when she needed it. She was very protective of him, but those that tried to hurt her would end up having a beating of their life from the nickname Sarugaki of Konoha because of his monkey tail swinging around his backside. She had grew up by his side for 7 years and always knew something about him was different than her mother, or their father for that matter, but she never dwelled on it much and just lived happily by her most loved person besides her Ka-san. She too had trained even though it was nowhere near as much as Naruto, but a good amount for one her age, and was already at the beginning stages of chakra control exercises and in the steps of Ninken-gen Fuinjutsu. Kushina tried teaching Naruto chakra control exercises, but for some reason he just had too much energy to try and control it. Basically she was on an early start of becoming a shinobi, while her Nai-san was training to become something different. They both physically grew up like the 7-year-olds they were, but somehow Naruto's body was starting to turn more lean and muscular, with each passing month of what he called warm-up exercises, which included him pulling a full-grown High-no-Kuni tree around Konoha in 7 laps, before climbing the Hokage monument, with one arm tied together with 2 giant boulders weighing him down. They checked out why he was able to do such things, but all they found was that Naruto had the strength and durability no human should have, while his stamina was off the charts going past even his mother's or Mito's own level. His muscles weren't too buff for a child his age, but they were quite see-able and at times when Mito doesn't think people were watching, she would watch how Naruto trained she didn't know why, but just watching him made her feel weird, she never told anyone though, and kept it to herself. Over the last 7 years when they grew up they had met their Kachan's best friends who were the Inyazuka matriarch Tsume Inyazuka and the Uchiha clan's head's wife Mikoto Uchiha. When the two women met the two little tykes they all but glomped the poor children, or in Naruto's case tortured when they found out about his tale. Ever since then he's been named their pet with the nickname Monkey-kun, Kushina, and Natsume never let him live it down either, always bugging him about it. It was the same when they met their dad's 2 students Kakashi Hatake and Rin Kazama. Mito and Naruto would call Kakashi either Iro Inu or Iro Nai, since Kushina told them about how Kakashi read the books their father's old student wrote in public, much to the man's embarrassment. Rin on the other adored them both, especially Naruto and his tale. It turned worse when she introduced a black-haired boy to Kurina Yuhi, Anko Midarashi, Yugao Yuzuki, and the young Chunin Hana Inyazuka, due to the fact that they would always glumps the poor kid due to the fact that they were attracted to his tale. Right now we find a spiky black-haired boy who wore black shinobi sandals with black cargo pants. He had around his waist a white sash with a black shirt over his chest, and strapped to his back was a black pole with gold tips at the end of it that from normal standards was just a normal black pole, but to those that knew what it truly did, they would know it was a bow staff with a seal making it able to expand and lengthen, and also wielded an injado that Kakashi gave him. The boy's face still had a little baby fat but was starting to lose it due to the training he was going through. The boy's eyes were now deep blue and had black eyebrows as well, and sticking out from his upper lip were 2 small canines. He had a small tired smile on his face since he was out panting in the forest of Konohagakure. Around him were craters and broken trees from his latest training exercise. Wiping the sweat from his brow he inhaled before exhaling. Standing up he heard something from within the woods thanks to his sensitive hearing and looked behind him and saw in the woods a mob of what looked like armed civilians with masked men mixed in with the kanji for northeast on their blank masks. Narrowing his eyes he took a step back and spoke, "What's up guys? Need something?" Already knowing the answer. "Shut up freak. Today you die and no one is here to help you or save you this time, so get ready to die," said a civilian. While the others cheered and the root ninja stood by watching for any shinobi to come by the area. "I see, and I suppose you think I won't fight back then?" he said, getting a arrogant smirk from Dumbus number 1. "Of course the freak has to learn from its betters who's in charge around here, so stay down and let your masters whip you like the obedient dog you are." Getting a roar of approval from the crowd. Naruto's eyes turned dark and dangerous, eyes that shouldn't be on a 7-year-old boy like him, and spoke while getting into stance, "Like hell I will, now come get me you pathetic bastards," he said, getting angry yells from the civilians, and with that they charged in intent to kill the monkey demon. Too bad they never stood a chance against a trained child in the arts of a shinobi. Quickly pulling out his bow staff, he started dancing around the civilians, knocking them out with a hit by the back of their heads or punches to the stomach. With his incredible strength, his punches at full blast could punch a hole through the toughest of metal, even steel. So to a civilian and him lowering the punches to a minimum, they felt like they got tackled by a bull. Few minutes later Naruto found himself surrounded by groaning or unconscious civilians, but then a second later he found the rude Anbu surrounding him on all sides. Letting out an irritated sigh, he scratched his head in frustration. There was just no way he could fight these guys. He knew of the Anbu, but these guys were, from what Jiji said, mindless drones that wouldn't stop till their objectives are accomplished, and him still a genin leveled shinobi, he wasn't nowhere near the level to fight them. Feeling a little desperate, he jumped off into the woods with the route following. A few minutes later Mito came running into the area with a happy expression on her face to see her Nai-san, only to see groaning and beat up civilians. She was getting worried until she found something that made her heart stop. Naruto's bow staff and ninjato were lying on the ground near his belongings, the only thing that was missing the picture they took together with Ka-san. She started to tear up, fearing the worst, and grabbed his staff and pack. "I gotta find Ka-san and Jiji, Nai-san may be in danger," she said, jumping off into the woods. "Hurry kid, I sense something wrong here, hurry," QB told her container. Over the last few years the two had finally met after one stressful training day and immediately bonded, seeing as the big bad QB wasn't as evil as people spoke of. Only Kushina and Naruto knew of QB speaking with Mito and didn't really care all that much since Mito was still family to them. Hell, Naruto was excited and asked if QB could see them, or other random questions, which made the three females giggle at how cute he was when he was like that. Nodding her head in agreement, the little girl sped off trying to find her Ka-san as fast as she could. Too bad she wouldn't get them in time. But Naruto. The black-haired boy had a few cuts all over his body and had a few kunai and shuriken lodged in his small frame. Following him were 4 rude Anbu that were on his tail. He thought about where he was going, but didn't care, as long as he could get away from these guys before they could kill him. Looking ahead, he saw the forests ending, so with a mighty jump, he shot off ahead of the Anbu and out of the forest, only to come upon a cliff separating him from going any further. Looking around, he remembered the place being called the Valley of the End, something he read in a textbook once. Ironic he would come here in his situation. Hearing a thunderous sound, he looked up to see storm clouds rolling in. Hearing multiple thuds, he looked over his shoulder to see the 4 rude Anbu behind him with their ninjato drawn. "You have nowhere to go now, demon, just surrender and Danzo-sama can finally have his weapon," said drone number 1 in an emotionless tone. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. "Danzo?" He shook his head and looked at the situation he was in, looking at the route before slowly looking down of the cliff. He saw the raging river from the brewing up storm. Nervously sweating, he had 2 choices to go with. Even for a 7-year-old, he could tell when he's near a life or death situation, and now he needed to find a way to escape. Looking over the cliff once more and the slowly advancing route, Naruto closed his eyes, slowly channeling his breathing to calm himself. Putting his hand into his pocket, he pulled out a picture he cherished more than anyone would know. It was a picture of the 2 most important people in his life, Kushina and Mito, with him holding Natsume on his shoulders and Kushina kneeling beside them with a smile on her face with her cheek on his own. He saw Mito's victory sign of what she said that day, on top of the world. With a peace sign. Smiling sadly, he remembered his problem and placed the picture back into his pocket. "Sorry Ka-chan, Mito-chan, looks like I won't be able to see you 2 again." With tears falling from his eyes, he steeled his 7-year-old resolve and turned toward the cliff, ignoring the shout of the Anbu for him to stop. He ran as fast as he could, and with a strike of lightning, he jumped off the cliff and fell into the raging river below. The rude all rushed at the cliff, only to curse seeing their objective commit suicide. The 4 shushed back to Konoha to relay their failure on the capture of Naruto to their master, who wouldn't be pleased. But Naruto, the monkey-tailed boy, was trying to swim up from the river to get air, but he just kept getting pulled back down by the currents, and without seeing it, his head hit a rock, making his eyes go blurry and him succumbing to unconsciousness. Sarutobi clan house. As Hiruzen was finishing up on his last batch of paperwork on political issues with Kumo, and Kushina was planning for her children's next training plan, they heard a loud bang and rushed off to see what the commotion was. Imagine their surprise to see a panting Mito with Naruto's pack and bow staff. Seeing the staff, Hiruzen and Kushina got worried, and even worse when they saw the red-headed child crying. Rushing to her child, Kushina tried to calm her down, only to freeze from a few jumbled words. Natsume kept mumbling as she cried into her Ka-san's chest. She heard a few things ranging from stupid baka villagers and hurting Nai-san, but the most fearful one was "I can't find him, I can't find Nai-san." Getting the gasp from both Hiruzen and Kushina, a look of fury formed into his eyes, and the old man suddenly leaped out the window and yelled. "Anbu? I want 5 search teams to look for Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Look all over High no Kuni borders. I want him found, hurry," he said, getting nods from them all, since Hiruzen saw Naruto as a grandson as Mito was seen as a granddaughter. So to hear one of his surrogate family members was missing had him angry and infuriated with those that tried to attack him one more. He swore when he got a hold of the idiot villagers that attacked his grandson in all but blood, he would make them wish that the god of death had devoured their souls. Kushina though was trembling as his shaky hands were over her face, while her eyes were wide in horror. Her only son, the one that at times reminded her of Minato so much and was what brought joy to her and Mito was missing. First Minato. Now Naruto. She grabbed Mito and pulled her into a hug, trying to hold back her tears. She felt Mito stiffen before wailing into her shoulder. She felt horrible now, all she had focused on was their training, and now not watching out for her children, one of them disappeared off Kami knows where. She finally let the tears fall and joined Mito as they cried for their lost family. It made it all the worse for Mito since being almost a newborn at the same time as Naruto, she had a sort of link to him, whether it was spiritual or physical she knew of when he was in trouble. And right then as she cried in her Ka-san's arms, she felt a disturbance within her when her heart ached for her Nai-san, that's when she finally got to the worst conclusion her 7-year-old mind could comprehend. I felt it and Nai-san is gone has gone has gone. She yelled, shocking the sobbing Kushina even more before she finally broke down with her Musume. They stayed there in each other's arms crying for their supposed dead Sachi Nai-san. Naruto's mindscape. Groaning, Naruto was rubbing his head in phantom pain while trying to open his eyes. When he did so all he saw is a blue sky and the glowing sun. Leaning up a bit he looked around himself to see grassy fields and mountains as far as the eye and of the shinobi eye could see. He looked around and saw a 3-story house from what looked like it and another small cabin beside it. Somehow he felt like he knew this place, but didn't know from where. Hey there. The cheerful voice made the Namikaze jump back in surprise and turned around quickly, only to see something quite shocking. Before him was 2 figures. The first one got his attention immediately. It was a giant dragon on epic proportions, its body was in the sky itself appearing in and out of the sky, the whole length of the body was full of green scales and spikes running down its back. Looking at its face he saw 2 giant glowing red eyes staring into his own with what seemed curiosity. After staring at the dragon before him in shock, he turned his gaze at the second person standing beside the dragon. And strangely the person was a man. His hair was a bit spikier in other directions, while his skin was a dark tan, showing the man was outside quite a lot. He also noticed the muscles on him and realized that he trained extremely. That's when shockingly enough he saw the monkey tail twitching behind the kid. Seeing the guy wearing a blue guy t-shirt and white belt with sand yellow martial arts pants and Japanese type martial arts shoes, Naruto was seeing the striking similarities he had with this guy minus the hairstyle and for some reason felt an odd yet similar connection with this man. Like he has known him his entire life. Shenron sensing Naruto's confusion spoke up. Boy, we have something to talk about. He got a strained nod from the 7-year-old Naruto and an amused chuckle from the tan man. But that Shenron introduced himself as the dragon of the Dragon Balls and watcher of the universe, telling Naruto the true story of how old the earth truly was, explaining of the humans that lived years and years before the shinobi era started. He also told him of what the Dragon Balls were, what they were created for, and their true purpose. Despite being only 7 years old, he completely agreed with the celestial being. Humans were sinful beings, but had to say they had the bright side as well to enjoy their lives to the fullest. It's true humans are beings capable of both evil and good, but without the other there would be no balance, just like yin and yang. So I say taking the Dragon Balls away from them was the first step to the true evolutionary chain for them. He said, getting a small smile from the man beside the dragon and a grin from Shenron. You're very intelligent for someone your age, and yes I agree with you. That is why there needs to be a protector to keep this balance from going out of control. Now there is something else I have called you here for. You're probably wondering where we are, and it's simple, this is your mindscape, your inner world, and this person beside me is basically your. Though the dragon never got to finish when the dark-skinned man jumped from where he was and flashed in front of Naruto, shocking him with his speed and held out his hand. Hiya. My name's Son Goku, and it's finally nice to meet you Naruto Uzumaki, he finished with a big grin and hand held out. Blinking a few times, Naruto smirks before grasping the older man's hand with his own. Nice to meet you Goku. So Shenron-sama care to explain what's going on. He said only to get a bonk on the head from Goku making Naruto blink, rubbing his head before looking at the grinning Saiyan. Nah, I'll start explaining this time because if he did it would take hours or even days, since the old dragon would just explain every little detail. Goku remarked, earning a growl from said dragon. Now Naruto, I'll cut to the chase. You know my name, but I may look like I'm in my prime to you, but in reality I'm older than the new gods as they call themselves. He said and then scratching the back of his sheepishly, while Naruto just stood there gaping. To think that before him was a man who could be the same age as Kakashi, but was in reality an older being than Kami and the other gods. He tried his best to not faint and just dumbly nodded, seeing he still had his attention. Goku continued. Now you are mostly wondering why we look so alike. Well, to put it bluntly, you're my reincarnation ever since Mr. Big and Green here saw the Saiyan blood that had condensed over the years finally erupt in you, transforming you into a full Saiyan like myself," he said, getting a confused look from Naruto. Seeing this, Goku sighed and placed his hand on Naruto's forehead. "I don't feel like explaining to you about Saiyans, so I'll transplant it into your mind, the knowledge of what they were." Before Naruto could retort, a glowing aura came from Goku and flowed into Naruto, making his own form glow the same. That's when a sudden rush of information rammed into his mind, and everything about the Saiyans was practically programmed in his mind. Everything, even about the truffles and the war between them and the Saiyans, the legend of the Super Saiyan, and finally how the race was all but killed by an alien called Frieza. He grit his teeth in anger as he saw people like him murdered, but smiled softly since they died fighting at least. That's when he closed his eyes and thought, now I know where I got my love of fighting and competition from. I see you understand what the Saiyans were. They were once a powerful race, the strongest in the universe, but they were all killed, including my own blood father Bardock, by that madman Frieza. Good thing Trunks finished him off. Which made Naruto calm down a bit. Looking up at the boy in front of him, he reminisced of what he heard and had to smile. I always knew I was different, I just didn't know how much, but now that I know the truth, it's finally good to meet a fellow Saiyan, which in turn got grin from Goku. Yeah, but we have things to discuss, you see Naruto, since we are to be reunited we have to become one, but in order to do this, you must reach the requirements both mentally and physically, and since you're currently at such a young age, we still have a few years for that to happen. He explained, which confused Naruto. Then what do we do then? I don't think I should just wait around doing nothing. Naruto stated and got a nod from Goku. That's right, and since you're out of Konoha, we can take this opportunity to fix this little problem, and that is with an old teaching method one of my mentors taught me, Goku said with a fond smile. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto got curious. Oh, and what would that be? That made Goku turn happy all of a sudden. It will be you traveling all across the elemental countries, honing your skills as I did, and Shenron and I here will teach you how to use your abilities correctly and how different they are from what humans nowadays call chakra. During this I will be teaching you of what I learned at your age, that includes every style I've learned and seen, and the ways to control your energy, or Kai as it was called by the users of this energy. First off will be what Master Roshi taught me, and that is called the Turtle Hermit way of training and martial arts. Naruto's ears perked up at the word martial arts, and Goku saw his reaction and smiled. Martial arts is a way of fighting in close combat, or as the shinobi call it, taijutsu, but martial arts is more of a basic way of fighting than what the shinobi do. Now first off, before we do this, Shenron here is gonna have to fully awaken your Saiyan blood, since only half of it has been awoken, and let me tell ya, it's gonna hurt a lot, he warned the young Saiyan. I don't care, as long as I can get stronger to fight stronger opponents and protect those important to me, I'll go through anything done to me, Naruto said with his eyes filled with the same determination Goku had when he is a child. Smiling at his longtime descendant, he pat his shoulder. Good, because I have a feeling trouble is gonna blow its way toward you, and you have to be ready for it. Now Shenron, do it, he said while Naruto nodded with him, showing he was ready. Seeing this, Shenron's eyes glowed red, and before Naruto knew it he was on the ground as blue lightning covered his body as a blue aura came off him in waves. Seeing this, Goku was a bit surprised. Whoa, he's got more Kai, fighting power or latent energy, than I did at his age, and even then I didn't find out about it till later on. But it would seem he was already unintentionally trying to control his power for a while now. Incredible. But Goku's face then started to sport a large grin. He'll be the perfect apprentice. Though Goku was cut short of his musings and his eyes widened when he saw Naruto's form start to glow a gold color. Before he and Shenron knew it, they had to close their eyes from the sudden light erupting within the mindscape. But that didn't stop the sudden skyrocket of Naruto's power rising in the elemental countries, alerting many, and even the ground itself was trembling from the raw power he was emitting. In Konoha, the two crying Uzumaki suddenly, along with the tired yet furious Ondaime, felt a strange yet foreign energy, along with a tremble that shook the very foundations of Konoha itself. But Kushina and Mito felt the power and knew immediately that it felt closely related to Naruto, but it was much stronger yet. Far more primal. Naranai-kun, I sense him, Ka-chan. I sense him, he's out there somewhere, Naranai-kun is out there, Mito said happily, while Kushina was sporting a full-blown megawatt grin on her face. Her son was alive and was out there somewhere, but the energy she felt, it was definitely that of what Naruto's felt like, but it was much more potent and primal, and it honestly sent chills down her spine for some reason. She wondered when she would see Naruto again, as did the cheerful Mito. But Goku and Shenron, the two, stood in shock at what they were seeing. Before them was a changed Naruto. They honestly didn't know how much Naruto would change when he had his other half of his Saiyan blood awakened, but now seeing the results they couldn't but agree it was a good thing. For in front of them stood Naruto, who stood from his normal height of 3'6" to 4'0". His hair was just like Goku's in every way except for it being spikier. His face was the same, but his eyes held a primal urge to fight a good fight and find strong opponents. His muscles were now much more seen since his sudden growth spurt changed his body slightly. His latest attire from the shinobi all black he wore was all but in torn rags from the sudden transformation, and Naruto's monkey tail waved wildly behind him. Goku was more focused on Naruto's energy signature, and it was off the charts. Even in his age, he was nowhere near this kind of level, yet the feeling Naruto's aura gave off was a very primal, a feeling only Saiyans would have, since he gained the same feeling as he did when he encountered Vegeta, but his rival had the feeling in spades, since it was the Saiyan pride and thirst for battle. He would need to change that in Naruto as he didn't want to deal with a second Vegeta. Oh, the chaos that would happen if it did. Looking into his new apprentice's eyes, he smiled, patting him on the shoulder. "Well, I guess we have a lot of work to do, huh?" he asked, getting a small grin from Naruto. "That we do, Goku-sensei, that we do," but that's when Naruto's eyes widened comically, making Goku wonder what was wrong until he realized that he was fearful of his mother and sister, who have been known to have short tempers and violent streaks. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Kushina-chan and Mito-chan are gonna kill me when I don't come back. Oh Kami, the horror. He said in a fearful tone, which Goku suddenly sympathized with him as he still felt the phantom pains of Chichi's frying pan attacks. Ouch. "I feel your pain, Naruto, as my wife was the same, but don't fret, we can send a telepathical link to them of what you're doing, then we must really get started on your training." Nodding in acceptance, he followed Goku's instructions and placed his hand on Goku's head while the old Saiyan reached out with his senses until he found the two still in the Sarutobi clan home, alerting Naruto of this, and the newly reborn Saiyan began to speak within mentally. "Hello, is this thing on? Hello?" Kushina and Mito's ears perked up at the sound they were hearing and looked around only to see no one. "Kushina-chan, Mito-chan, can you both hear me?" Knowing the voice, the two redheads' eyes bugged out and jumped up in fright as they heard Naruto's voice, looking around frantically. "Ah. Ghost. Naruto Naisachi-kun's spirit is talking to us." They both shouted, trying to not hear the voice. Naruto and Goku both gained huge sweat drops on the back of their heads and chuckled before Naruto spoke once more. "Kushina-chan. Mito-chan, it's me, Naruto." Their eyes widened even further and looked up only to see no one. Getting frustrated, they both yelled, "If you really are Naruto Naisachi-kun, then where the hell are you?" They both yelled in unison. Naruto suddenly gulped nervously while Goku sang a silent prayer to his descendant for a good future and to help him avoid the wrath of two female redheads. "Well, I'm not totally sure myself, but I want to tell you two something. This latest attack on my person has opened my eyes. Not only am I not safe in Konoha at the moment, I'm also risking both of your safety with the shinobi and civilian alike trying to kill me." They wanted to protest, but then he spoke up once again. "Now I know what you're thinking, Mito-chan, and stop right now. I know they think I'm some monster, and I'm fine with that. Let them think what they want to, they'll just regret it later on. Besides, I don't like to see you cry or you either, Kushina-chan." Too bad Naruto didn't see the blushes upon both the females' faces as he said his words, but Goku did, and since he's lived for so long, he finally understands a little bit more of the females and had to grin. Naruto had a way with words with women. Kushina and Mito just sat there rethinking what Naruto just said and kept playing it over and over in their minds as heat rushed to both of their faces. Why does Sachi-kun's voice sound deeper and the way he said those things, and when did I start calling him Sachi-kun? What happened to just plain Sachi? A flustered Kushina was wondering as her hands were on her face, trying to hide her growing blush. "He's mine, son, for Kami's sake, and I shouldn't be thinking about such things about the one you brought into this world." Mito, on the other hand, was more open. Her Ani-san was acting much differently than before, but the way he spoke made that strange feeling in her grow much more and suddenly found a strange heat coming upon her face. That's when she heard QB speak. "Damn, Naru-kun sure knows how to speak with a lady, has got you and Kushina-chan blushing. Hell, even myself." QB muttered the last part to herself only. "Ayu-chan. When did you start calling Nai-san Naru-kun?" The redhead asked mentally with a cute yet confused expression on her face, but QB just blushed, trying to hide her embarrassment. I'll tell you later," QB said quickly before cutting off mental connection, leaving behind a confused Mito. That's when they both realized his final words and their eyes grew as wide as dinner plates. "Sachi-kun, don't tell me you're fearing the worst, Naruto not coming back to protect Natsume and herself from Konoha's villagers." Hearing this, Naruto sighed, but spoke honestly. "Yes, that was my first option of not returning, but I've been persuaded to do something different. I'm gonna travel the elemental countries and try to hone my skills and get stronger. That way when I come back I'll be able to protect not only myself, but my family as well. Until then we won't hear from each other for a long time." He answered solemnly. Hearing this, the 2-3 counting QP felt their hearts wrench and asking the question on their minds. Kushina asked, "How long will you be gone?" She asked, dreading the answer. There was a long pause, making them feel uneasy. Ahem, well, it would be around the time Mito-chan graduates from the academy to when our generation of Chunin exams begin. I'm not totally sure, but don't worry, I'll be fine. I just want you two to be safe and Mito-chan to train as well to get stronger before we meet again, and you Kushina-ka-chan, I want you to start training once more. I'd like to fight the woman that made Iwa, Kumo. And Kiri pissed themselves in fear whenever you draw your sword," he said nervously, getting shocked looks from the two, while QB was surprised as well. "You'll be gone for years, Sachi-kun, but if that is truly your decision," she said sadly. "It is, Kushina-ka-chan. I realize I'm not normal like the others, the monkey tail proves this, so I'd like to fully understand just what I am, but could you tell Tsurujiji, Mikoto-san, Tsum-san, Sukina-chan, Fem. Sok, Hitomi-chan, Fem. Itachi, Hana-chan, Inunai-san. And the others that I will be back, so let them not worry of where I am and let them continue on with their lives. Can you do this for me?" Wiping the tears from her face, she smiled. "Of course, Achi-kun, just hurry up with your training and come back to us," she said, getting a chuckle from him. "Hey, you got it, Kushina-ka-chan. Naruto Nai-kun," said the silent voice of Mito, which Naruto noted was too silent from Mito. Worried, he answered her, "Yes, Mito-chan, is something wrong?" Biting her lower lip, she started to shake before speaking. "Please come back home quickly. I understand you need to train like I do, but I'll miss you, Ka-chan will miss you," she said as tears started to form in her blue eyes. Naruto flinched at her words, but steeled his resolve. "I know this and I'll come back as quick as I can, I promise. I mean, I still owe you that day out, don't I?" he said amusingly, getting a giggle from her as well as Kushina. The day outs, as they are called, was practically Mito dragging Naruto everywhere with her despite whatever it may be. She called it bonding with Ani-san, but he mentally calls it torture. A few seconds of comfortable silence reigned in before Naruto spoke once more. I gotta go, guys, not sure if I have Jiji's Anbu on my tail or what, but I gotta get going, okay? Bye." Snapping their heads to his voice, they spoke in unison, not knowing how long it would be before they saw Naruto again. "Goodbye, Naruto-kun. Be safe," they said in unison. But mental connection went out and Goku was smiling at the grinning Naruto. "You have a wonderful family." "Naruto reminds me of my own a bit, though I suspect you are gonna get something very surprising when you meet them again, I just know it," Goku said with grin of his own. Naruto, shaking his head at his master, stood at attention and spoke. "When should we begin, Goku-sensei, Shenron-sensei?" he asked. The two beings blinked and looked at each and blinked twice before grinning. Turning his head back to Naruto, he spoke. "We will begin by first getting you some new clothes, and seeing as you have no money, you're gonna be doing some odd jobs that includes farming, construction, and delivering milk, while using an old training method Master Roshi used on me and my best friend Krillin," Goku said, remembering the times he did the training. That's when a giant green turtle shell with 2 straps on appeared in his hand and started handing it to Naruto. Expecting it to weigh a bit, Naruto grabbed hold of the shell, only a second later hitting the ground with a loud thud. "Ami, how much does this thing weigh?" Naruto muttered and never saw the dark gleam in Goku's eyes. "That, Naruto, will be your personal training. Wait until I'm satisfied with the results. Now get out of here and get to training," he said, personally kicking Naruto out of his own mindscape. When he was gone, he heard Shenron chuckling. Raising an eyebrow in curiosity, he asked, "Shenron, what's so funny?" he asked the old dragon and saw the smirk of the dragon. "Aha, nothing, just that turtle shell weighs 10x more than what you had to begin with at your start of training." Blinking, Goku chuckled, seeing where this was heading to. "Ah, yeah, about that. Well, I just have a feeling that was the beginning of where he would need to start at," he asked, getting a deadpan look from the dragon. "You call 20 tons a beginning?" he asked in a monotone-like voice, which Goku just nodded at. Shaking his head, the dragon laid its head down, thinking about his and Goku's new student and how his training should be planned out for the next few years. The black blur was currently zipping around, causing several rock textures to explode on contact and be reduced to rubble as the blur made contact with them and vanished from plain sight. Several more erupted on contact with either a punch or kick before once again they were nothing more than a pile of pebbles. The blur appeared in the air before landing on the ground with a crouch, revealing a spiky black-haired teenager who appeared to be 11 to 12 years old. He seemed to be wearing a black fighter guy with a red sash holding it together. Picture the outfit Gohan wore during the Cell games, along with a pair of black martial arts shoes, similar to the ones Gogeta wears. He then stood straight up, revealing the face of none other than Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. For the past 4 years he has spent all of his time training under his masters Goku and Shenron and has changed a lot during his travels. He spent the first year training his physical strength and speed, using the turtle shell Goku had him wear for basically every form of physical training he had him do, such as climbing mountains with weights on his arms and legs or with one arm tied behind his back. He also did the same when it came to something like swimming, in order to not just increase his strength but his speed as well. During his travels he learned how to perform a lot of labor jobs such as carpenting, farming, and construction work, and would usually travel to small villages and assist them. Naruto also went through survival training where he had to learn about the various plants that he could use for healing, as well as ones that could be eaten and are poisonous, as well as use the landscape to build shelters like a homemade teepee or a small cabin. Training in the wild did give him a more perspective for nature and wildlife, and sleeping out at night and eating food you catch yourself shows you're capable of surviving alone in the forest. It also helped train his senses and raised his awareness around him in case missing nin or bandits attempted to attack him. Not only that, but he also learned some intermediate fuinjutsu from a monk that live in the mountain range of Yama no Kuni, and needless to say, the young Saiyan was a natural and was able to understand the basics of modern sealing complexes that most beginner couldn't understand and would take a few years to learn. So far, he knew how to use seals and scrolls to store supplies, money, clothes, tools, etc. The second year Goku got Naruto started in learning how to control his Kai, or Kai, which was in a manner the same as chakra, since it was naturally the life force which is a tangible energy that lives inside a living being and its major focus being in the center of the body. By drawing it out, a person is able to manipulate it and use it for performances outside the body, as well as increase their speed, strength, endurance, and can increase the power of their attacks to inflict greater damage to opponents. Goku first taught Naruto how to draw out his Kai, and when he was able to do that, he proceeded to help him in learning how to summon it in its raw form by having him focus and summoning it into his palms. This exercise took around 3 weeks to perform before he was able to create a ball of Kai, which left Naruto surprised and awestruck at how beautiful it looked. Once he managed to do that, Goku first taught him the basic attack for this technique called the Kai Blast, and with that, Naruto spent his time learning how to manipulate and shape the blast into different forms and managed to form it into either a thin beam of energy that can easily pierce through solid rock or steel to one that can leave a crater in the ground, as well as form it into a thin disc that can cut down countless trees in a single line. The only issue was the amount of energy he put in them, so he spent his time in working how to not waste so much and control it effectively. After that, Goku decided to teach him a few Kai-based techniques that were really powerful if used correctly, the ones that he learned or seen his friends use. He started off by teaching him his family's traditional technique, the Kamehameha Wave, Turtle Destruction Wave, which happened to be the first technique he learned from Master Roshi when he started his training. Goku instructed Naruto in how the energy attack was basically a straightforward attack that could do serious damage ranging from destroying a small mountain and causing tidal waves to wiping out a large city and destroying an entire planet or even a solar system. So with that, Naruto learned the Kamehameha and even created different variations of it, like ones he could use as a barrage attack or manipulate it like a heat-seeking missile. Surprisingly, Naruto managed to get the technique down in nearly half a year before Goku taught him the other Kai techniques, but only after he was able to use them properly and master them to an extent, and even then, Naruto still continued to hone his skills, even after mastering whichever technique Goku taught him. Shenron on the other hand taught Naruto an ancient style of fighting called elemental bending, which was the bending of the 5 elements that were based off of a certain fighting style. Basically it's bending form the Avatar cartoon that is combined with a certain element like water bending, for example. Water bending is based on a style of Tai Chi Chuan, specifically the Yang style. It is a Chinese martial art that features slow movements and elegant forms that evoke the feel of flowing water. Water bending's strength is its great versatility. Rather than supporting a separate set of offensive methods, water bending employs defensive techniques that can be transformed into attacks and counters defense into offense. Instead of simply deflecting an attack, water bending's defensive maneuvers focus on control, achieved through turning an opponent's own strength against him, rather than directly harming the opponent. The other was earth bending. Earth bending is generally based on the Hung Gar style of Kung Fu, which features heavily rooted stances and strong kicks and punches that evoke the mass and power of earth. The martial art is based on the movements of animals, including the tiger, which is utilized when initiating hard blows, and the crane, which is used to land gently back on the earth. Another version which is more versatile is one based off the southern praying mantis Kung Fu, using its precise stepping to maintain contact with the ground, as well as sensing the different vibration through the ground and reading a person's emotion without using your eyesight. Another one was firebending. Firebending moves are based mainly on the style of northern Shaolin Kung Fu, but with a few techniques from northern 7-star praying mantis. These martial arts feature quick successive attacks that exert extreme power for just a moment, much like an explosion, called Ginglik. It optimizes a strong continuous offense, sacrificing defense for greater power, the principle behind a preemptive strike, making firebending the most aggressive of the five. Airbending is based on the Bagua style of martial arts, also known as circle walking or 8-trigram palm, along with a small hint of Xinyi, also known as mind-heart boxing. These martial arts feature swift, evasive maneuvers that evoke the intangibility and explosive power of wind, drawing energy from the center of the abdomen. Bagua, which utilizes circle walking, the idea behind it being the act of walking the 8 trigrams, is known for its constant circular movement, which makes it difficult for opponents to attack directly or land a blow. Since it's always maneuvering, nobody can get a solid hold on of this maneuver. Maneuvers employ the entire body with smooth coiling and uncoiling movements, utilizing dynamic footwork, open hand techniques, punches and throws. A common tactic is to maneuver behind an opponent and mirror their movements, preventing them from turning to face the practitioner. Unlike other bending disciplines, airbending is almost entirely a defensive art. The final one was lightning bending, which unlike the other elements, relied on using the internal strength, such as the bioelectricity that emits around a person's body, but is invisible to the naked eye. Lightning bending was basically one of the most dangerous forms of binding, since it was based off of the Shotokan fighting style, delivering fast and precise blows that relied on the person having fast reflexes. Basically each of these 5 basic disciplines each represent the balance of life, meaning neither one was too strong or too weak. With this, Naruto was intermediate at best, learning the 5 elemental fighting styles. Goku also taught him a very unique technique known as flight Bukijutsu, in which the user manipulates their Kai energy so that they can levitate or fly into the air. Naruto was literally excited in learning how to fly, as he always wondered what it would be like to soar across the air like birds do and see everything below him. Goku had to agree since he too loved to fly. When Naruto first started off, he could only levitate a few feet into the air and slowly learned how to maneuver around objects and increase his speed and slow down. The first few tries proved to be disastrous at first, due to the fact that Naruto ended up crashing into several trees face first, and then one time the side of a cliff, leaving an imprint of his body which made Goku and Shenron bust out laughing at the incidents, but he did start to improve as he got older. Right now Naruto overall had an excellent build for someone his age, think Teen Gohan from the Cell games. Swaying behind his back was his tail, and Goku also warned him about how a Saiyan's tail was their weak point, as whenever it is grabbed, it weakens the Saiyan greatly, but he helped Naruto overcome that weakness. Naruto also worked on using a bow staff and a katana, as he bought them both from a weapons store near the border of Fire Country, and worked on the katas, the style he learned from Hiruzen and Kushina before the incident. Said Saiyan was observing the damage he did around the area and couldn't help but rub the back of his head sheepishly. "Hell, looks like I overdid it a little," Naruto stated as he saw a rock texture collapse over and hit the ground. "Haha, don't fret Naruto, you've improved a lot over the last 7 years in controlling your power. Good thing this mountain isn't populated," Goku stated as he was extremely proud in how far Naruto has gotten in his training and felt a sense of pride. "Indeed. I didn't expect you to get this strong so soon, young one, but it looks like you've surpassed my expectations," the Eternal Dragon remarked with a sense of pride in his voice. "Thanks, Shenron-sensei," Naruto said as he wiped a bead of sweat from his face. "Though I wonder how Kushina-chan and Mito-chan as well as the other are doing. I really miss them." "I'm pretty sure they are doing just fine, Naruto, after all they're each strong in their own way," Goku assured his apprentice. Naruto merely sighs and nods as he makes his way over to the small hut to gather his things. "I guess you're right, sensei, since Aruoji has things handled." He pulls out a map of the elemental countries and inspects it. "I'll need to restock my supplies at the closest village, and I think I'll make a detour to Kiri next. What do you think, Goku-sensei?" Naruto asked as he got his stuff packed up. "Sounds like a plan, Naruto. Let's get some supplies first at the closest village on the island, and I think you should head to one of the closest elemental countries next," he instructed while his apprentice studied the map. "That would be Kurigakure no Sato." "Alright then, next stop Kiri. Say sensei, can I fly there this time, instead of having to swim like I did when I went to Nami no Kuni?" he asked and heard his mentor chuckle. "Sure Naruto, knock yourself out, but don't do it literally, as I still haven't gotten over that time you crashed head first into that mountain, hehehe," Goku said, chuckling while Naruto hung his head in embarrassment before flaring his Kai and taking off into the air. After getting the supplies, he was currently soaring over the ocean, passing several islands. "Man, that's weird, I should be close to Kiri right now," he pondered until he noticed a ship sailing across the water. "Maybe they would know if I was close or not." With that, he took off towards the ship. "Man, this is so boring." A female Kiri-nin groaned while 2 of her comrades had tick marks on their heads. "For the love of Kami, stop whining, damn it." A Jonin yelled, getting tired of the Chunin's constant whining, even though water patrol was the most boring objective, while the other Jonin chuckles. "Relax man, it's not like we're run into anything out here," he remarked until he saw a black dot heading in their direction. "Hey, what is that?" he asked as he squinted his eye, and his teammates did the same until the dot got a little bigger. "It looks like a kid and he's flying towards us." The female nin's eyes bugged out while her comrades appear right beside her with the same expression. "No way," the Jonin said until Naruto appeared before them, hovering in the air like it was as simple as breathing. "Hey, are you guys from Kurigakure no Sado?" Naruto asked the group, who said nothing but gape at him. "How are you hovering in the air like that?" the other male Kirin asked. Naruto blinked a few times at their reaction and shrugs. "It's a technique my sensei taught me, but anyway, are you guys from Kiri?" Naruto asked again. "Yeah, we are, but why are you going there? Don't you know there's a civil war going on there?" the male nin asked the young Saiyan. "Really? Wow, I didn't know that, but I'm merely going into the wilderness as I am a traveler," the black-haired Saiyan answered while the ninja looked at him in a skeptic manner, but relented. "Fine then, it's 10 miles southwest from here, but like I said, be careful as travelers aren't really welcome there," the leader informed Naruto, who nodded back at the ninja. "Okay, and thanks for the info. Later." He did a two-finger salute with his hand before flaring up his kai and took off instantly, making the water from under him splash upwards and even creating a gust of wind, leaving the three Kiri ninjas stumped. "That was awesome," the female nin said with stars in her eyes while her two comrades merely nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Naruto managed to make it to Water Country and was searching for a good spot where he could train in peace as well as make a temporary home while being close to a village where he could restock his supplies should he run out, and after searching for a while, he found a great spot that was near a mountain range, and below it was a jungle with a decent clearing and a large river, along with a waterfall flowing into the river. Afterwards, he spent the whole week making a decent-sized cabin for himself before setting up the rooms with the furniture he sealed up, as well as his tools, clothes, training weights, etc. Right now, the young Saiyan walking through a trail he created in the jungle, carrying the dead body of a wild boar he caught that was hog-tied to a large stick over his shoulder, and also was carrying a large sack that contained wild fruits and vegetables, as well as medical herbs that grew in the forest. "Man, catching this boar with weighted clothes was a lot tougher than I thought, but at least I'm getting a decent workout," he said as he made it to his cabin and drops the boar onto the ground and wipes a bead of sweat from his forehead. "Phew, this humidity is no joke. I didn't think it would be this hot in Kiri," he thought while pulling out a jagged-looking dagger with the edges appearing to be smoothed out but extremely sharp, and proceeded to skin the boar and then cut open the stomach and remove whatever entrails he didn't need and threw them somewhere in the jungle away from his cabin and where scavengers would get them. Afterwards, he hung the skinned body over a pole that is out of the reach of any bears, wolves, and mountain lions, while removing the tusks just in case he needed extra tools. For the rest of the day, the cheerful Saiyan was in the jungle, performing acrobatic feats across the trees and in ways most kids his age couldn't even think of doing, but then again, he is not like other kids considering who his ancestor is. As he landed onto another tree, he stopped in his tracks and took a whiff in the air. His eyes narrowed as the scent grew stronger. "That smell, there's blood in the air and it seems to be fresh, and also, sniff, sniff." He took off into the direction of where the smell is coming from. He lands in the area and his eyes widened at the sight. The area seemed to be charred, and on the ground were the bodies of masked ninja who were either in the ground in a puddle of their own blood with missing limbs or, to his surprise and shock, melted. Oh man, there must have been an intense fight here earlier. He pondered and looked around the area only to see a blood trail that went into the jungle. Someone's injured, and from the scent she's female. I'd better get to her before she's picked off by the predators in this forest, or worse, bandits. But that he took off into the forest. As he leapt through the trees, the scent was getting stronger, and as he landed on the last tree, out of pure reflex, he flips off of it as it was hit by a glob of what appeared to be lava and melted the entire tree. "Whoa, that was close," he stated, and heard someone huffing. He turned his head to see, in his sights was whom he could picture was without a doubt the most beautiful woman he's ever set eyes on. From her appearance, she seemed to be around 18 years old. She has ankle-length auburn hair styled into a herringbone pattern at the back, a top knot tied with a dark blue band, and with 4 bangs at the front. 2 bangs are short, with one covering her right eye, and 2 are long, crossing each other on her chest, just below her chin. Her eyes are light green. She dresses in a long-sleeved dark blue dress that falls just below the knees. It seems to be closed at the front with a zipper and is kept open on the front right side from the waist down. The dress only covers up to the upper part of her arms and the underside of her breasts. Underneath, she wears a mesh shirt that covers more of her upper body than her dress, but stops short of covering her shoulders and still leaves a sizable cleavage. She also wears shorts in the same color as her and underneath those mesh leggings reaching down over her knees. Around her waist, she wears a belt with a pouch attached to the back on the left. Furthermore, she wears high-heeled sandals and shin guards reaching up over her knees. All in all, she looked like a goddess in Naruto's eyes, and he couldn't help but blush a little at her flawless form, despite the fact that she had a few tears and dirt on her face. A sided smile formed on the auburn-haired woman's face as she saw the boy stare. "You see something you like?" She teased but then hissed in pain, clutching her bleeding side, and was about to collapse over until she was caught in the arms of the black-haired Saiyan. "Whoa, take easy lady, otherwise you're gonna bleed out more than usual," Naruto warned as he carefully helped her up while looking at the gash on the left side. "You need to get that treated before it gets infected. I have a cabin not far from here, I can treat it for you," he offered but then frowned as he sensed a group of unknown ninja heading here. The next thing May knew, she was scooped up in his arms bridal style and said womaniques in surprise. "Sorry about this, but we've got to go." With that, they both vanished in a blur, leaving the hunter nin on a cold trail. A day later. Mai Terumi, the leader of the rebel faction and person Naruto helped, was looking outside for her savior from yesterday. By the river, a large splash occurred, surprising Mai as a fish that was the size of a small bear and hit the ground, flapping and flailing around. After that, Naruto leapt out of the river, shirtless and wearing his pants, like Gohan did after the Cell games. As he landed on the soft ground, he shook his head in order to get the water out of his hair, and then did the same for his body, until his tail wagged off the remaining bit of water on his person. "Man, these fish are tough to catch," he said to himself, unaware that Mai was sporting a small blush on her face as she saw his toned body. Never in her life has she seen any kid his age this ripped, as he had the build of a warrior, due to the fact that he hardly had any form of baby fat on his person. That was when she noticed his tail and had to resist the urge of screaming kawaii at the sight. That was when Naruto turned his attention to Mai, and his expression brightened. "Hey Mai-chan, I see you decided to get some fresh air while I was fishing. I guess those herbs did the trick and helped you recover faster," said 18-year-old, snapped out of her stupor and couldn't help but smile at his expression. "Indeed they did, Naruto-kun, and thanks for helping me even though you didn't have to," she replied back and nearly gawked as she saw him hoist a giant fish that was twice his size over his shoulder. "I know, but I couldn't live with myself if I let someone as pretty as you get killed by those hunter nin," he replied back in an honest tone, unaware that his words made the tint of pink on her face grow a little until. When it came to the opposite sex, Naruto was not as dense around females like his sensei was, due to the fact that when he was in Konoha, he basically spent a lot of time around them. Basically, he was innocent when it came to women and would simply compliment them on their beauty as if it was the simplest thing in the world, unaware that it would result in them blushing due to how innocent he looked when he told them. Most males would do it to get into their pants, but Naruto was a different case. Another thing Naruto didn't like were perverts. His Aniki Kakashi was an exception in a way due to the fact that he mostly kept his in check thanks to Rin and the fact that he reads what his mother called smut. "Thank you Naruto-kun," she replied in a quiet tone as she brushed one of her bangs back. "Kami, what's wrong with me? He's a preteen for crying out loud, yet here I am acting shy around him. And those innocent eyes aren't helping the fact either." "You're welcome. Well, I'm gonna go get this fish skinned and clean for lunch. How do you feel about sushi?" he asked Mai, who smiled. "That would be great Naruto-kun," she replied back. "Great. I'll get onto it and afterwards I can take you back to your camp." With that, he headed to the back of the cabin in order to gut, clean, and cook the fish for lunch. 6 months later. It's been 6 months since Naruto met Mai and resumed his training in the deep wilderness of Mizu-no-Kuni. Ever since then, many rumors have spread throughout the country and the shinobi village of an entity within the forests. Many don't know what it was, but how they know is that many in the shinobi village could hear the sounds of trees falling or explosions of something out of the ordinary. Sadly, no one was able to find this person or thing, since no one knew what it exactly was, but even then, during the Bloodline War, the mysterious deaths of Kiri shinobi that believed in Yagura, the current Mizukage's ideals about the bloodlines being demonic in nature, were always found at the Mizukage Tower's doorsteps, either in a broken and bloody heap, barely alive or simply dead. Depending on the person's condition. The only sign this mysterious entity showed was the slight indentation of feet at the doorstep of the tower, and the only person rumored to have met this being was the rebels' very own female leader, Mai Terumi, who was said to have been saved by this unknown warrior when she was ambushed by the current Mizukage's elite hunter nin. Though there was one thing that all the shinobi, whether they were of the rebel forces or the ones that followed the Mizukage, remembered, and it was the sight they saw only 3 months ago during the second assault between the two on the rebels' fortress of Tezuki. It was when the forest was being ravaged by the jutsu and explosive traps being used that something horrific happened. Flashback. Fortress of Tezuki. Mei Terumi had just snapped the neck of an Anbu nin that had attempted to attack her blind spot while her forces were assaulting the fortress. The sound of battle cries, blades clashing, seal tags exploding, and Justu being unleashed echoed around the bloody war-torn fortress, and bodies of both rebels and loyalists littered the ground. Smoke also rose around the area as the battle ensured under the full moon. We have to keep pushing, this fortress is one of Yagura's main strongholds, and if we can claim it, then we'll be one step at getting closer to the village, but at this rate, she pondered as she watched her comrades, the very people that were either bloodline holders or simply those who were against the war, fought with everything they had. It's gonna take a miracle for this to succeed. I wish Naruto-kun was here. As soon as those words left her train of thought, a deafening roar echoed across area, making all of those that were fighting stop in their tracks and look around. Mei's eyes widened in fear, thinking that Yagura, who was in his Biju form to come assist his army in defending the fortress and was gonna call on her forces to retreat, until she looked up and saw a large hulking figure leap over and land in the middle of the battle, causing the earth to shake violently and for dust to rise into the air. When it cleared, everyone's eyes widened in shock, horror, and fear as they set their eyes on what appeared to be a beast whose height rivaled if not surpassed even that of the nine-tailed beasts. It appeared to be a giant monkey-like creature with dark brown fur covering its entire body minus its face, hands, and feet with large pointed ears, and its long and powerful tail swished around back and forth. It sported a set of wicked-looking canines in its maw, but what mainly freaked them all out was its glowing red eyes. They were basically, in simple terms, primal. More primal than any other animals, and from the way it was growling at the Kiri ninja, it was not happy, and a growl rumbled from the giant ape's throat. Mei stood on a tower speechless beyond words as she stared at the beast. Her look of fear changed to surprise as she recognized the tail, and the image of a grinning Naruto popped up in her mind. "Naruto," she said quietly before said blonde stood straight up and let out a deafening roar that was so powerful that it shook the ground more than he did when he landed into the area and started to beat his chest. "What the hell is that thing?" One of Yagura's ninja cried out. "Who cares, just kill the monster." With that, the ninja on Yagura's side proceeded to throw countless kunai with explosive tags on them at Naruto and exploded on contact, covering his form in smoke. Some smirked triumphantly, thinking that they killed the beast, but when the smoke cleared, Naruto was unharmed and snarling in annoyance, shocking the ninja to the core as those explosive tags had enough power to level a large building, but didn't even singe its fur. Naruto brought his hand up into the air and brought it down hard, crushing the enemy ninja like flies. He roared in triumph before stomping repeatedly on the ground. As this happened, the rebels decided to be smart and get the hell out of the giant ape's way as he attacked the enemy nin with his hands, feet and tail as they tried to use both explosives and jutsu that did little to slow him down. Mei watched the one-sided fight go on, pondering on how Naruto became this giant ape. One of her Kozao appeared next to her, as did Chijuro. "Laikami," was all the man said as he witnessed the slaughter, while Chijuro tried his best not to lose his lunch at the massacre. They then watched as the Saiyan turned ape reared his head back, opening his maw wide and gathering what appeared to be energy into its mouth. Once he gathered enough, with mighty roar, brought his head forwards and fires an energy blast so potent that it dissolves anything in its path to nothing, while the other ninja watched frozen in horror as the attack descended towards them. When it made contact, an explosion lit up half of the country in a flash of light, causing the place to erupt and generate a shockwave that ripped trees from the ground, as well as the earth itself. Mei shielded her eyes from the shining light and the debris, as did Chijuro, and now, when it cleared, they each saw a crater that was extremely wide and deep, and there was barely nothing left of the fortress or the shinobi guarding it. "There's nothing left in that energy. It wasn't chakra or yokai, it was too potent." A stumped owl stated as he has seen Amari, menacing ball, and what damage it could do, but this made it look like child's play. "We better get out of here as well before it spots us," Chijuro suggested as he backed away only for his heel to tap a rock that fell off the tower they were on and hit the ground. Chijuro's eyes bugged out in fear as he saw it make a clicking sound, as did Ao. "You baka, what have you done?" Ao tried not to scream out. Naruto froze in his tracks, and his ears twitched from the sound before turning its head to their direction. Ao and Chijuro paled to the point where they looked like ghosts as the ape growled lowly as his head descended toward the three ninja. Mei did nothing but stare at the form until she stared at Naruto's glowing red eyes. "We're gonna die, I'm sorry, Ao-sama," Chijuro whimpered out as they both sweat bullets. That was when Naruto stopped growling and lightly sniffed Mei's form and went from their primal state to a look of curiosity. Mei blinked also as she saw this and slowly reached out, moving her hand to his giant muzzle, making Ao and Chijuro freak out in a comically fashion. That was until she placed her hands on his muzzle, resulting in the ape to growl out softly as she gently rubbed his nose. Naruto sits down, making the earth rumble lightly while wagging his tail in a happy manner, and from their shock was purring. Both Ao and Chijuro felt like they were gonna faint as this behemoth that not too long ago ravaged the fortress, destroying it, and the enemy like they were nothing was now being calmed by their leader of all people, and wondered what was her connection to this beast. Can this beast really be Naruto? Mei wondered as she felt its muzzle vibrate. She then notices that he was trying to growl out something. Mei-chan was all it said, causing Mei's eyes to widen, and the same went with Ao and Chijuro. It spoke. It spoke to Mei-sama. Chijuro cried out, pointing his finger at Naruto in a comical fashion, only to get a brain duster to the back of his skull by Ao. "Baka. Don't scream, you'll startle it," the man yelled back. Naruto was all Mei said quietly. Well said. Ape got back up and walked away from her, disappearing into the forest. Flashback ends. After hearing about the destruction of the fortress, Yagura immediately sent the remaining Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen SHK, the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, in search of the beast, so he could kill it for killing his shinobi and one of his main strongholds, only on that same day, to come back with them extremely injured and on the brink of death itself. One Kisame Hoshigaki, Kurigakure's very own Kurigaku no Kajin, monster of the hidden mist, quickly fled after the swordsmen reported their failure. Rumors said, the fish man was extremely terrified after the encounter with the ape and was said by one of the surviving swordsmen that Kisame got the worst of it. He was close to being killed by the thing if it wasn't for his Samahata saving him at the last second. Ever since then and on our way back, Kisame was always looking over his shoulder for another attack. But what basically got Kisame scared was the great ape's eyes. They were primal and filled with a rage that would make the Hachibi's rampage look like a carnival ride, and the blue-skinned man downright refused to go after that ape, not caring if his leader would execute him or not, as he never wanted to see that beast or its eyes ever again, for as long as he lived. So safe to say, Yagura kept a wary eye for the so-called ape, but still concentrated on the war. Mei though had an entirely different reaction after the event, so she just placed a report down, stood up, and went into the forest issuing orders to her second-in-command that she would be gone for a bit and didn't want anyone to follow her. No one was able to tell what Mei was thinking that day, and her eyes didn't portray anything when she went into the forest, but it was highly thought she went to meet the ape herself, only to come back with a big smile on her face and a dazed look in her eyes. Ever since then, despite the best efforts of the rebels asking what happened, all she said was that the ape wouldn't harm them at all and wouldn't be seen again for a while. Still, it made people wary if it ever shown up again, but also they were suspicious of how Mei was the only one to know the ape, but also the strange entity in the forest. That was another thing, people were beginning to think the entity and the monstrous ape were the same thing. So when they found no sighting of it before and after Mei went to find it, they felt extremely relieved. But now, after 6 months of fighting, the rebels were losing their sight in the war, and with Yagura pressing on all sides made it hard for them to counterattack. It made it only worse when said Jinchuriki was joining the battle in order to end the war quickly, and it was happening with him having perfect control over his Biju, the Sanbi no Kyodagame, 3-tailed giant turtle, made the war tip in his favor. Kurigaku rebels' main camp. In the main camp of the Kurigaku's rebel forces, we could see in the main hut was a round table with the inner map of the whole village of Kurigaku within. Around this table was commanders and generals that made up to command the forces. Reaching the end of the table was Mei Terumi, rebel faction's leader, Yoden no Danshingoku plus N, lava dancing princess, and rumored to be the only link to the strange entity in the forest, and the Biju-sized ape as well. We can't keep hold on our positions with the enemy pushing forward is only making it worse. I agree, and with Yagura on the front lines himself is making it impossible to push back and only watch our men get slaughtered out there. True, and with our resources going down immensely and the enemy all converging on us in one giant army is gonna make things even worse. Seeing their leader's thoughtful look, the general spoke. Mei-sama, do you have any idea to handle this situation? Mei kept thinking for a while, not showing she heard the man. We're losing this war, that's true, and we don't have the manpower to fight both the army that's coming and Yagura himself. Hell, I don't think an army can defeat Yagura, especially when he uses the chakra of the Sanbi. That's when something important hit her, snapping her head up, alerting the others. Her eyes widen a bit. Maybe, just maybe, he might help us. If he were to help us, I have no doubt we'd win this war. Mei-sama, are you okay? The general asked his leader. Looking at the general with a small smile and a hopeful look in her emerald eyes, she spoke. I think I may know a way to win this war, she spoke, getting shocked looks from them all. Abruptly standing up, the general spoke. What? You know a way? He asked. Nodding, she spoke. Yes, but it all depends if he accepts, she said the last part softly before turning towards her commanders. Alright, I want you all to go to your posts, I'll explain everything later. First I need to check on something, she said, getting hesitant nods from them all. When they all left, Mei turned toward the window looking into the deep forest of Mizu no Kuni before letting a slip of a smile cross her face. I wonder, will you help me again like you did last time, Saru-kun? She asked herself in a voice filled with hope as she got up and did some hand seals. Uchiha no jutsu. She said, before a puff of smoke erupted. When it cleared, there before Mei was a small serpentine lizard with wings on its back. Rearing its head up to Mei, it spoke. Is there something you need, Mei-sama? Yes, I want you to go into that forest and find someone for me. Here, this has his scent on it. She said, fishing out a small black cloth. The lizard leaned over and smelt the piece of clothing before looking back at Mei. I got his scent. Is there anything you want me to tell him? Yes, tell him that Mei needs his help greatly, and it's very important that he comes here quickly. That's all I ask of him. This got a nod from the small serpentine lizard before it ran through a hole in the tent and into the forest. Mei watched her summon disappear into the forest before lowering her gaze to the floor as a soft yet longing look came into her eyes. I hope you accept and come, it would be nice to see you again. But that she turned around and left the tent to prepare her forces for the battle that is to come. One day later, jungle of Kurigakures. Mei summon came upon the cabin in the jungle and scrambles across the ground quickly as it came upon the front door. Once looking up at the door, the lizard started to scratch on it to get the attention of the person inside. It seemed to work when it heard footsteps coming closer, so when the door opened, the lizard's eyes comically widened at the sight before it. Hello little one, what is it you need? Naruto asked as crouches down while the lizard just shook its lead head and spoke. I'm here on behalf of Mei Terumi. She has asked for your audience, but also said it was very urgent you came. The lizard said, while Naruto tilted his head to the right a bit before chuckling. Very well, tell her I'll be there shortly and thank you for relaying this to me. He said, which the lizard just nodded before puffing away in a cloud of smoke. When it was gone, Naruto looked into the forest in the direction of the rebel camp. Seems Mei-chan needs help, well can't keep her waiting. With that he turned around and walked into the house before closing the door, getting his gear. Kurigakure rebels main camp. Mei sighed as she looked upon her forces all lined up looking at her with serious expressions. She had just explained the details of Yagura and his army coming to finish them off. She seen their grief-stricken faces at finding out such information, but was quickly determined when they remembered what they were exactly fighting for. She just hoped it wasn't too late and he got here before the fight began. Despite how brave her forces were and determined to win, she knew they wouldn't, even she couldn't Yagura when he used the Sanbi's chakra. Sure, she could take him down with him alone, but that in itself is a tough fight. Looking upon her forces once more she spoke, now we must prepare for the battle. I want all shinobi at their posts and begin preparations for the enemy. She shouted, getting a massive hi from them all before they dispersed into multiple directions to prep the battlefield. Once they were gone, Mei looked upon the rising sun and was already seeing the slight formations of the enemy coming. Sighing, she let her thoughts go back to him. Naruto, I wish you were here, she softly uttered, praying to Kami that he would come to their aid. I am here, Mei-hime. The said rebel leader stood shocked still before turning around to find the owner of the voice. Only for her eyes to widen and a big smile come upon her face for the person in front of her. It was none other than Naruto himself, and strapped to his back was his katana, while his staff was in a small scroll. As well as several smaller ones that were attached to his sash. Swaying behind him was his tail, and he had his grew out to where it was now shoulder length and had it tied back into a low ponytail, like how Gohan's was when he trained in the hyperbolic time chamber. He had black bandage wrapped around his arms and stopped near his elbows, like how Rock Lee wears his, and also wore his black martial arts guy with his martial arts shoes. The only difference was the fact that Naruto had grown a lot taller during these last 6 months and was close to matching Mei's height. She then walked over to Naruto and hugged him while he returned it. Looking at Naruto, Mei let a small blush come upon her face before speaking. I didn't think you would make it in time, she admitted, while Naruto just chuckled. Yeah, sorry I'm a bit, I had some last minute things to take care of. He said, breaking the hug, making Mei pout, which got another chuckle from the Saiyan. Putting up a serious expression, Naruto spoke. Now, Mei-chan, what is it you needed to speak to me about? He asked, and Mei just remembered the fast approaching army coming, which made her eyes take a serious look in them. This made Naruto blink a bit. It was quite rare for Mei to become so serious in front of him. Naruto-kun, you know of the war we've been fighting? She asked, which made Naruto nod. He's known about the war since he's partaken in a few of those battles when they came near the forest. Of course he wouldn't be there long just so he could help the rebels fight back. Yeah, I know of it, but what does that got to do with anything? He said curiously. Mei just looked down at the ground before doing something very surprising. Her emerald eyes started to tear up, making Naruto's eyes go wide at the sight. Never has Naruto seen Mei cry before, but seeing it now made his heart hurt. Letting out a grim expression, Naruto placed his hands on both of her shaking shoulders. Mei-chan, what's wrong? He asked sincerely. Mei quickly realized her tears and quickly cleared them away, but it was too late since he has already seen them. It's Yagura, Naruto-kun, he's making a final push and converging his whole army here to wipe us out, and we truly don't have the manpower to really fight back. Naruto's eyes widened a bit before narrowing. He was linking what she was saying while still listening to her speak. Despite how much the rebels want to win, it's impossible. We can't fight an army and a Jinchuriki with full control over his Biju, she said. Looking up, she saw the stern expression upon Naruto's face. Naruto-kun, I know it's selfish, but please I beg you. She fell on her hands on knees and bowed her head before him, surprising the Saiyan as he knew Mei was a strong and proud Kunoichi. Help us, she begged while sobbing quietly, as this war was too much for her, especially since she was the leader of the rebel faction, but all the responsibility did was do more harm than help, and it was too much for her. Although Naruto really didn't like to kill, it was only necessary when he fought to protect those important to him, and Mei was undoubtedly very important to him. Plus, the civil war also reminded him too much of how the villagers treated his sister. Prejudice against things they don't understand because they were too stuck in the past. With that, he kneels down to her sobbing form and places both of his hands on the sides of her face. Mei felt his hands on her face and looked up to see Naruto smile warmly at her tear-stained face and gently wipe the tears away. You already know my answer, Haim, he said softly as he helped her on her feet. Besides, I would have helped you even if you didn't ask for my help. Plus, I'll get to find out firsthand just how powerful the Mizukage is, even if he can control the full power of his Biju. The Saiyan finished in a tone full of excitement, surprising the dual bloodline holder, but then she shook her head as she saw the excitement in his eyes in facing a powerful opponent and shook her head in amusement. Naruto-kun, you never change, do you? She said, greatly amused by his attitude towards fighting. Naruto just chuckled, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. Turning toward the soon-to-be battlefield, Naruto spoke. I can't help it, Mei-chan, but I do have to tell you, if the battle Yagura and us gets out of hand and he starts to release his Biju, I want you to get out of there, he said, making Mei look at him like he was crazy. What? But that's crazy. If I do, you'll be killed, because when he uses his Biju, Yagura is unbeatable when he uses that chakra. Only another Jinchuriki has enough power to face him. She cried, inwardly questioning Naruto's sanity of such a question. The Saiyan just chuckled before looking at the prepared battlefield once more. Let's just say, I have a way to fight him, but please just do this for me if it happens, alright? He asked. Mei just looked at him worried before seeing the confident look in his eyes. Seeing that look, all worry was gone in a blink of an eye. Instead, she just shook her head and smiled. Well, if it does happen, you better come back alive, or so help me, I will drag you back from death so I can kill you myself. Got that? She said, poking him in the chest to emphasize each word. Naruto merely sweat drops but nods before taking her hand in his and kisses her knuckles, making he blush in an instant. Don't worry, you won't be the only one that would kill me if I died right now. I have 2 other redheads back home that would kick my ass if I died here, he said. Then before her bodyguard Ao could see him, Naruto's form disappeared in a burst of speed, leaving a smiling Mei behind. 1 hour later, battlefield. Upon the cratered and broken battlefield was 2 armies on different sides. On one side you had the Mizukage Yagura and his army fighting for the ideal Kurigakure and killing off all bloodlines within their village. On the other, you had Terumi Mei, leader of the rebel faction, which fought for not just their people, but also the bloodline's survival. The first wave of Yagura's army was already decimated by traps set up by Mei's forces, but already after fighting the massive forces of Yagura's army, after only an hour, was taking its toll on them. Upon this field of bloodshed was Yagura Jinchuriki of the Sanbi and current Mizukage. In front of him was Mei Terumi, rebel leader and current bloodline user of the Yoten and Futen, lava and boil release. Glaring, Mei looked around to see her forces engaging Yagura's own. Mei, why do you continue to fight back? You're the only ninja I respect, even if you have one of those accursed bloodlines. Questioned Yagura as Mei looked back at him with a glare. I fight for not only Kurigakure, but for the safety of the children with bloodlines. Because of you, families were separated, slaughtered, or just plain butchered. I'm fighting to stop that and bring Kurigakure back to what it used to be. She answered back, getting a glare from the Kage. How foolish of you, then you shall die with your own demonic kin, Mei. Screamed the crazed Kage. Mei stood guard as Yagura charged at her, leaving behind dust in his wake. He was almost upon her form until a blur struck him right across the face and sent him flying in the air and crashing into the ground hard, causing a cloud of dust to erupt into the air and the ground to slightly shake. Mei blinked before looking ahead to see Naruto smiling at her with a wave with his right leg up, showing he was the one to have kicked Yagura. Hey Mei-chan. Sorry I'm late, I got lost on the road of life. He said, gaining a twitch of an eyebrow from Mei well back in Konoha. The copy ninja Kakashi Hot Aki sneezed hard, wondering who was talking about him. You and your excuses, Naruto-kun. She muttered, shaking her head. Naruto on the other hand just grinned before turning around quickly to see the glaring form of Yagura, with his clothes and body scratched a bit from hitting the ground, as well as the broken nose that was slowly healing with blood going down his face, showed how much the hit injured him. "Who are you?" Yagura questioned as he saw the black-haired warrior land beside Mei. "Who am I, you ask? Just your average 12-year-old with a monkey tail." Naruto answered back with a toothy grin and his tail swaying behind him. Yagura's eyes widened as he saw the appendage sway back and forth and narrowed his eyes at the new opponent. "So all this time another accursed bloodline holder was hiding in my country. You must be the so-called entity of the forest who has been aiding these scum," Yagura stated as Naruto rolled his shoulders in order to get the kink out. "Sheesh, what an attitude. So what if I was born with a tail? I happen to like it and it attracts a lot of good attention," Naruto stated with a grin on his face before he narrowed his eyes in a serious fashion, surprising Yagura as the playful demeanor changed into one of a warrior by the next second. "I came here to help Mei-chan and end this senseless war." Yagura on the other hand looked irked. "Senseless? I am purifying my lands by ridding them of these accursed bloodlines. People like her are the reasons why we always go to war. Clans with bloodlines are nothing but a cancer that needs to be cleansed, and that is what I'm doing." Naruto on the other hand clenches his fists at his proclamation and scowls. "Purifying? You call a mass genocide a good cause? All you've done is destroy your home and the lives of those who are innocent and had nothing to do with this war. All this destruction over nothing is not right. You call my cause nothing? Foolish boy, I don't have to explain my reasons to you or anyone, as the only thing awaiting you and that wench and those rebels is death," he growled as his chakra flared. "Fine then, if reason won't make you understand then my fists will," Naruto said, and with that, a blue flaming aura flared around his body, making chunks of earth rise around him. A form of curiosity appeared in Yagura's eyes as he could actually see this. Chakra? It didn't feel like chakra or yokai, so what exactly was this energy, he wondered. "So the time for talk is over? Well then boy, show me exactly just how powerful you are," Yagura challenged. "Trust me, you won't be disappointed," Naruto remarked before vanishing in a blur, surprising both Yagura and Mei, as that was pure speed, meaning there was no chakra in his movements. The next thing that happened was Yagura's head jerking back from a vicious right hook to the jaw, making his eyes glaze over from the impact and stumble back a little. He then hunched over as Naruto drove his fist into his gut, making him spit up before being assaulted by a series of several punches to the sternum. Naruto stopped his assault, delivers a roundhouse kick to the Kage's skull, and sent him flying and crashing through several rock textures. Naruto vanished once again and appeared behind the man's flying form, with his right palm pushed backwards and then thrusting it forward, releasing a powerful telekinetic shockwave to Yagura's spine, and said vessel for the Sanbi went sailing through the ground, creating a deep trench line. Mei was gobsmacked at what just happened, and her eyes bugged out when she saw him hover into the air. Naruto on the other hand remained focused and knew this was far from and didn't drop his guard for even a second. "Come on Yagura, I know those love taps couldn't have taken you out so easily," he said quietly until from the smoke several large water bullets flew out and headed straight for Naruto. Said black-haired warrior dodged and weaved through the attacks until one of the larger ones hit him directly in the chest and sent him crashing into the ground. "Naruto." Mei went after his fallen form, and as she approached him, he was sprawled out on the ground shaking the cobwebs out of his head before flipping back onto his feet. "Ow. Man, that smarts," Naruto cried out as he held his throbbing chest for a few seconds before shaking it off. Those water bullets were no joke. A normal person, even if they were a ninja, would have been seriously injured. That was when a smirk formed on his face. "I guess he's a Kage for a reason. I've got to be more careful and not slip up or I'm done for." "Not bad boy, but not good enough," Yagura stated before going through a series of 50 hand seals at a fast pace before adding chakra into his lungs. Suryudan, water release. Water dragon bullet. He instantly shot a large torrent of water from his mouth, and it took the form of a roaring water dragon with glowing yellow eyes and ascended towards the two. Mei clapped her hands together as the dragon made its way towards them. "Naruto, get behind me," she ordered, which he did while her cheeks expand a little. "Yoten. Maguma Dangan, lava release. Magma bullet." She then shot out several large lava bullets at her foe, who did a ram seal in one hand. "Suiton. Sashoha, water release. Water shockwave." This time Yagura shot out an even larger torrent of water that cancelled out Mei's technique and rushed at them. "Damn it. I can't counter that in time." Mei cursed as the large wave of water loomed over them and was ready to crush them both until Naruto appeared behind her and wrapped one arm around her before taking off into the air as the water crashed in their location. Yagura's eyes widened in frustration as he saw the boy save them both before Naruto landed back on the ground with said russet-haired Kunoichi. "It's a good thing I can fly," he commented while Yagura was getting frustrated. "How was he able to do that? He wasn't using any chakra in that technique he used, and the only ones who could actually fly were the Nidaime and Sandaime Tsuchikage. Just who is this kid? He then once again fires another water dragon at them both. Not this time. Naruto brought his hand back and gathered blue kai in his palms. He brought them forward and fired an energy blast at the dragon. The water dragon engulfed the blast, but then it expanded and exploded into water, making it spray everywhere, much to Yagura's shock. Impossible, how did he didn't get to finish as he was struck in the side of the face by an aerial high kick to the side of his face, making him stumble back a little. He snapped out of his daze before his senses put him on high alert and brought his right arm up to block another attack, but Naruto broke through and delivered a palm strike to his jaw before spinning around his back and delivering a reversal spin kick to his spine and sent him flying across the battlefield and crashing into a large rock texture that fell over and buried the Kage in the rubble. Mei on the other hand remained stumped and flabbergasted as she saw Naruto smack the man around like he was a genin. Naruto landed back onto the ground, remaining in his fighting stance and with a focused look on his face. Said russet-haired female appeared beside him. "It's not over," she replied, getting a nod from him. "You think I'm? The only thing I did was piss him off and I'm pretty positive he's not gonna be in a happy mood." Naruto didn't know how right he was because the rubble erupted into nothing and murderous intent and yokai filled the area, making the rebels feel the intent and look fearful. A bead of sweat fell from Mei's brow as she saw a pissed-off Yagura snarl at them with glowing eyes, while a greenish-blue demonic cloak with 3 swaying tails swayed behind him as his injuries healed up. "You're dead, boy," he growled out, "you hear me? You're dead." He released a roar that shook the area, causing a shockwave to blow around the area, making rocks and other debris scatter about. "Mei, you need to clear out," Naruto informed her. She wanted to protest, but the look in his eyes showed no form of joking and remembered what he said back then. She didn't want to leave him alone to fight this monster, but she knew good and well she was no match for Yagura when he used his Biju powers and let out a relented sigh. "I know," and Naruto, said Saiyan turned his head only to have Mei catch his lips in hers, making his eyes widen before he returned it, and they pulled away from each other, while said woman had a small blush on her face. "Good luck," she informed him before she shunshuns out of the way. Naruto then vanishes and appears before a pissed-off Yagura's form. "You may have gotten lucky earlier, boy, but now you're gonna know the true meaning of fear before I send you into oblivion." "Oh really? Well, let me tell you, Yagura, this whole time I wasn't even taking you seriously," Naruto commented with a smirk on his face, and Yagura's eyes widened a little. "You're bluffing, there's no way a mere human could have the strength to rival a Jinchuriki's, it's impossible." "Says you, and what makes you think I'm human?" A small smile grew on his face as he gets into a fighting stance. "It doesn't matter if you're human, demon, or just a freak of nature, you're still going to die." He vanished from his spot and appeared behind Naruto with his fist raised and brings it down. Naruto vanished as Yagura punched the ground and created a large crater, kicking up rocks and dust. Naruto appeared on a rock texture in a crouching position before getting up and firing a barrage of Kai blasts at Yagura. Said Kage turned his head and saw the incoming blasts before sprinting across the field, avoiding the blasts and heading towards his prey, so he thinks. He punches his arm forward, causing an ethereal arm to extend and head straight for Naruto. The young Saiyan saw it and then extends his hand out, forming a yellow ball in his hand, and then it starts to flatten and take the form of a rotating energy disc and rears his arm back. Destructo disc. With that, Naruto throws the disc at the arm. As soon as the attacks collided, the disc simply cuts through the ethereal hand like a hot knife through butter. Yagura's eyes widened as he saw the technique cut through the outstretched chakra arm, so he cancelled out the attack and was forced to avoid the deadly energy attack unless he wanted to get his head lopped off, but the bypassing attack did leave a nasty gash on his left cheek, while the disc cut down several trees and boulders before dissipating. "This is madness. His attack cut through my cloak as if it was nothing. That was pure yokai that I use and he just damn it. Damn you, boy, I swear if it's the last thing I do I'll kill you." Yagura bellowed as he got on all fours and snarled at the young Saiyan. His cloak flared up and he unleashed several chakra claws at Naruto, who basically used his reflexes and Kai blasts to either dodge or destroy the ethereal hands, infuriating the Kage of Kiri. "Hold still, you freak." That was when Naruto vanished in a blur of pure speed before appearing under Yagura with both palms in front of his cloak. Yagura's eyes widened at the boy's speed, wondering how he was able to easily dodge the attacks of a Kage. "Let's test the limit of your cloak, shall we?" Naruto asked as blue Kai gathered in both of his hands and formed into orbs and afterwards joined together to create a larger energy sphere. Yagura's eyes widened as he realized what Naruto was gonna do. "No. Stop, you foolish brat," or he didn't get to finish because Naruto let out a battle cry and fired. The Kai sphere pressed against Yagura's cloaked body, making his feet skid back against the dirt as he tried to stand his ground. The blast pushed outwards as Naruto was surrounded by a flaming blue aura. With one final push, Naruto poured more energy into the attack and Yagura was sent flying across the battlefield. He was blasted through the front gate of the village and into the evacuated land before an explosion occurred and smoke in the form of a mushroom rose into the air. Oh man, it's a good thing the village was evacuated. I have to be more careful and not let my instincts get me like that. Naruto replied before taking off into the air and towards his opponent. Meanwhile, watching the battle from afar were Mei and her second-in-command Ao, who both were wide-eyed and their jaws hung from the ground, as did the rebels who witnessed the attack from earlier. "My Kami Mei-sama, where did you find that kid?" The patch-wearing man asked his leader, who remained speechless as she saw the magnitude of his attack and was glad he was on their side. Smiling, she spoke proudly, "That's a secret, Ao." Sidelines of the battlefield. "But God, that kid's beating Yagura down like a rag doll," said the amazed words of a rebel shinobi. "I know what you mean, and even in his cloaked form the kid is still beating him." Another one said, awed at the fight before him. "That kid is so cute," said a female shinobi who had hearts in her eyes, which made the other two just sigh. Naruto was flying through the village before landing on top of a tower and searching the area for his foe. His energy signature has weakened greatly and it's only a matter of time before he didn't get to finish because the ground underneath him rumbled and shook violently, startling the young Saiyan. "Oh man, that's not Yagura who's causing this." That was when the ground erupted, causing debris and dust to shoot out everywhere, while Naruto covered his eyes before looking up and staring at none other than the Sanbi no Kaidagame, three-tailed giant turtle. The three tails primarily resembles a turtle, but with a crab-like shell and three shrimp-like tails. It has a pair of human arms and hands, but no hind legs. Its right eye is constantly closed, indicating some sort of injury, and because of this, it is particularly vulnerable to attacks directed at its right eye. "Wow, so this is the Sanbi. Funny, I didn't expect you to be this ugly," Naruto remarked while the creature stared down at the black-haired warrior before growling in a low manner. Its one eye glared murderously at him, while its three giant tails swished around him, crushing and sweeping buildings around it like nothing. Many were now horrified whether they are enemy or ally. To face a Biju was just asking for a slaughter. Mei and Ao. "Oh Kami, help us all," Ao stated, looking upon the fully formed Sanbi of legend. Its giant form crushing much of the village already. Hope was slowly dwindling from his eye seeing the tailed beast of legend. Mei though was more focused on Naruto. His form wasn't deterred from seeing the Biju. If anything, he looked more excited than anything, but didn't show it. But she knew he was excited. She's known him long enough to read him enough to know that much. That's why right now, she was more curious than fearful for what was going to happen now. "Good luck, Naruto-kun. Wow, this beast's chakra levels are incredible. If this is how strong a three-tailed Biju is, I can only imagine how strong QB could be." She could easily mop the floor with this clown. A grim expression formed on his face as he rose into the air and stared down at the giant turtle. "At this rate there won't be a village to go back to. I really didn't want to use that yet since I'm still learning how to maintain it." He sighs in annoyance and brushes his hair back a little. "What choice do I have? I know Goku-sensei said to not use it unless the situation was dire, but this would be one of those times." He then got into a horse stance once again and started to gather his power. He grits his teeth as his hair rises once more, but this time, it takes on an even spikier appearance. The skies start to darken and thunder clouds cackle around the area. As the sky rumbled, flashed of lightning rained from the heavens and the ground started to rumble. "With Mei. Mei-sama, what's going on?" Ao asked as he tried to get his footing in check. "I don't know, but for some reason I know this is our allies' doing," she answered before dashing towards the village gate. "Wait. Mei-sama." Ao shouted as he went to join her, as did Chijuro. "With Naruto." Naruto growled lowly as his power continued to rise. From underneath his form, chunks of rock, buildings and other debris rose into the air and the earth split from the weight of his power. His muscles flexed from the power increase and bursts of yellow static shot around his body. That was when his hair flashed a golden color before returning to its basic color. The thunderclaps became even louder as Naruto's power level kept rising. After a few minutes, Naruto reaches his max in his normal state before he reared his head back. Grai-ai-ai. That was when he released one final cry and a golden flaming Kai aura flared around his body. Due to the release of his new power, the ruined buildings around him tumbled over and collapsed. The flare caused the entire area around him to coat the gloomy village in a bright light. Naruto's appearance completely changed. Now his hair was spiked upwards, minus the bangs, and took on a golden color, as where his clothing was a lighter shade, appearing to be a light gray color, and the same with his complexion being a little lighter than normal, and the slight increase in muscle. His expression was a lot sharper and more fierce looking, and his eyes were no longer dark blue, and his tail was now a golden color. They were now teal and were gazing at the Sanbi with a piercing expression that would make anyone tremble in fear. "No more, it ends here, Yagura," Naruto said in a calm yet cold voice. "With Mei, Ao, and Chijuro. By Kami, that kid is emitting all of that power. Incredible, it's practically on par if not greater than the Sanbi, but that's impossible. How can a mere boy possess such great strength?" The Byakugan wielder wondered. Mei on the other hand was entranced by Naruto's golden form. The light emitting from the now Super Saiyan was so warm and shined like the sun, enveloping everything around him. If it wasn't for the fact that Naruto had a monkey tail, she'd practically think he was an angel sent from heaven to purge their village from the darkness that slowly destroyed them in this war. Sanbi growled for a while before releasing a powerful roar that released a shockwave so powerful that it blew everything before it minus Naruto back. Said Super Saiyan just stood there floating into the air, not moving a single muscle, while his hair and aura blew back a little before it died down. "Nice breeze," Naruto merely said as the beast growled at him before bringing his massive arm up and swinging it forward at Naruto, who just stood there. "What's that fool doing?" Ao cried out as he saw the massive appendage head straight for the golden-haired fighter. Naruto brought his left arm up to the side as the appendage went right at him, and when it struck, nothing happened as he simply blocked the attack with his arm, while the ground underneath him rumbled. Both Ao's and Chijuro's eyes bug out in a comically fashion, and their jaws hung down. "Did he just?" Chijuro started to say. "He did." He stopped Sanbi's arm with his wrist. "Ao finished." "My turn," Naruto said as he brought his palm in front of the Sanbi's face. He then fires a powerful Kai spirit cannon blast that sends the massive creature flying backward, and the after effects level the demolished buildings and roads in the village. The Sanbi crashes through several large buildings before tumbling onto the ground, kicking up dust and debris. Naruto remained in his posture for a few seconds before bringing his hand down as flying towards his opponent's location. The giant turtle rose from the rubble, roaring in frustration before throwing a large chunk of rock at Naruto. Said Saiyan vanished in a blur before reappearing again and fires a Kai blast at the second boulder, demolishing it. The Sanbi then fires a large water bullet from its gullet at Naruto, who weaves around them before punching the last one back at the Sanbi, who got hit by it and roared out in anger. Naruto appeared over his head with his right leg up before descending and striking it directly in the head with a powerful heel drop kick and practically cracked the shell on tops of its head and crashed headfirst into the ground. "This has gone on for too long. I have to end this," Naruto stated as he flew up into the air until he was high enough and started the Sanbi's fallen form as it tried to get up. He then cupped his hands together and brought them back. He started to gather blue Kai in his hands, and the blue orb shined around the area as it hummed to life. Hami, his aura flared as he powered up the attack. "Hi!" he shouted as he thrusts his hands forward and shoots out a streaming powerful light blue beam of energy downwards at the Sanbi, who looks up to see the beam head right for him. The technique crashes down and engulfs the beast in a dome of light, while said Biju roared out in pain as the attack tore through his body until a great explosion occurred, sending a shockwave that made every form of debris scatter everywhere. Mei, Ao and Chijuro were forced to cover their faces with the attack and add chakra to their feet in order to cling onto the top of the gate. Naruto watched as the flash died down and smoke rose from the very deep and large crater his attack caused. The smoke slowly cleared and revealed the form of a beaten, bloody, broken, and unconscious Yagura, whose clothes were tattered and torn. Naruto slowly descended to the ground and landed right next to Yagura. Looking down at his form for a few seconds before looking up to see the clouds clear up and the sun to shine down on the very village that covered in darkness, but thanks to Naruto was now basking in the light. "It's over," he said as he reverted back into his normal state and collapsed onto the ground, completely exhausted. Several minutes later, Mei and a few of her rebel ninja appeared in the battle scene. The 18-year-old knelt down at the Saiyan's tired form and placed his head on her lap before smiling at him. Naruto looked back up at her with tired eyes and smiled weakly, giving her a thumbs up and chuckling. "Congratulations, Mei, you guys won," he finished before passing out with a smile on his face. She couldn't help but chuckle at his antic before tears of happiness fell down her cheek and landed on Naruto's. "Thank you, Naruto-kun, thank you for bringing our war-torn lands back into the light," she thanked to the young Saiyan as the sun rays shined down on his face. The day was the day that Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, descendant of the legendary Saiyan Goku, had made his first mark as the future guardian of this world. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.